Ladies and gentlemen, this is PJ Cavaya, the voice of State Wars Hockey, and you are watching the SWH podcast brought to you by Glass Half Full Productions. Thank you to all of our amazing sponsors, Mission Bauer, Tour, Alkali, La Beta, Rink Rat, Conix, Warrior, Monkey Sports, Yord Watches, Car Shield, Rocket Puck, Wraparound, and Top Shelf Targets. We look forward to seeing you all on the rink soon.
Well, here we are, State Wars Hockey Podcast number 14. Glass Half Full Productions. I'm Tim McManus. I'm here with Greg Thompson, as always. Long Island, New York.
Episode number Greg Thompson.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
Number 14. But, just another day in paradise over here, Tim. I know you played some tennis this morning. How'd you do? How'd that go?
You know, I'm still breathing. So, no, it was fun. It was good to get out there. Used to play a lot of tennis when I was younger and started playing again a few years ago with some buddies here, and didn't play it, I don't think, at all last year. So it was good to get back out there today. It was a beautiful day out, and took me ever to find my tennis racket. I was ripping the garage apart, and right when I had given up after 15 minutes, I'm walking out, and it's hanging right in my eye, right in front of my eyes. I don't know how I missed it all that time. So I'll blame it on old age. But I got my racket out, went for 2 hours, did a little social distance sport, I guess they call it. But it was fun. We got out there and Yeah,
I have to do something like that soon. Our boy Coach D, I think he's going to swing by tomorrow at some point, and he wants to go for a little skate and play a little hockey somewhere. I'm not sure where we're gonna go yet, but I gotta give him a call a little later and check in with him.
Yeah, the outdoor rinks by us, for those who don't know, on Long Island, it's basically broken into Nassau County and Suffolk County. I live in Nassau County. Greg lives a little further out east in Suffolk County. The rinks by me, none of the outdoor rinks are open. They're all locked, which is a freaking joke. So we haven't been able to go out and play in a game yet, which is annoying. When I see people all around the country, kids are out there skating and, just doing your thing. And, I love playing tennis, but I would love to be skating around and playing a little pickup for sure. They got golf courses open. I see guys playing hoops outside, or playing tennis. Like, give me a break, open the rinks up. So hopefully that'll happen soon, because I definitely want to get on my skates and shoot the rock around a little bit.
Yeah, it's been too long. We might have to find like a paved area, like a really smooth area, and just kind of mess around out there. I know we brought up tennis courts, but I know tennis courts these days, especially around here, they don't let you go on there with hockey skates anymore, just because it tears up the surface.
It's great. The courts I was on today, they just redid them all. It was at a school.
Oh, yeah.
Saw a hockey rink in the corner on the courts. And one of the guys I was playing with, his son actually was on the ice hockey team I coached this year. And he said, yeah, the kids all play there. They leave the net there. So
oh, cool.
I guess they get away with playing, which is pretty cool, because I used to do that too back in the day.
Yeah.
We take the nets down, the tennis nets, and probably wasn't good what we were doing, but we just skate. It was smooth, right?
Yeah, the surface was so smooth, man. I mean, I would definitely compare it to the rinks that we used to skate on back in the day, like the smooth concrete. It was definitely very similar. I just gotta find a good spot to go skate tomorrow. And that's really it over here. Anything new in your neck of the woods?
No, nothing really. I guess the wheel companies probably like the kids skating on the tennis court stuff. It's like sandpaper, wears the wheels down pretty fast. Nothing really going on here. Just working on stuff for State Wars. Obviously, we got a lot of things in the works. I know I'd sent an email out about we're updating things. Hopefully, any day now we're hoping to be able to finalize our plans and our dates and whatnot, and just lock in everything. Just a lot of back and forth with the rinks and just the local governments and whatnot, just to make sure everything we're doing is okay and follow the guidelines and whatnot that we have to keep everyone, happy and safe and whatnot. So, we're getting all that done, but, we definitely do plan on, of course, having State Wars this summer. It's still another 2 months from now. What's today? The 21st today. So, we weren't going to be starting until around July 24th. So it's more than 2 months away.
Yeah.
which is really more than double the time that we've already been in this stupid quarantine. So, I got to think by then, people are going to be just dying to play. But we're getting a lot of emails, a lot of teams wanting to come out. So we're expecting to have a great tournament, of course, so, that'll be awesome. And, real excited for the PAMA Pro division this year. I know that's, we want to talk a lot of PAMA Pro today. We have a special guest coming on today, and, a lot of people texting me, is it Michael Jordan? You guys talk about The Last Dance a lot. Is it Jordan coming on? I'm like, I wish, so a lot of people guessing who's going to be coming on, and, not a big secret type thing. It's someone that, has actually already been on the podcast with us, so we're going to have some fun with. So we'll wait a few minutes to bring him on. But, just getting ready for the summer, talked to Darren from the Arch last night. He's working hard and getting ready, hopefully, for his West Coast finals, and he's feeling really good about that, which is awesome. So, just want to get back to some sort of normal here with hockey. And I think everyone's just in the same boat. They just want to get back on the rinks, Greg, we're used to playing 2-3 times a week, and then all of a sudden you don't play at all. It's
crazy.
You really miss it, right?
Yeah, how about our friend Charlie? He's on like 7 teams. He plays every night of the week, so he must be dying right now. But as far as State Wars goes, guys, once we know, you'll know. We keep getting texts and emails and Facebook messages and whatnot. Guys, seriously, like once we know, we'll release everything. Like Tim said, we're just waiting on, the mayors and all the higher ups just to get back to us and figure things out on their end. And once everything's dialed in, we'll release everything and let everyone know what's going on. I know it's
the biggest thing is people plan, right? So we don't want them booking a flight and a hotel if we got to change our dates by a couple days or do anything a little different. So, we're still talking to Taylor Sportsplex. I've actually also been talking to the Fort Wayne rink where State Wars was last year. Their state's opening up pretty quickly here. So, we have both situations, working with to make sure that we have the best scenario possible for State Wars. So, once it's all finalized, and I'm confident that we could say, okay, book your tickets, book your hotel right now. Let's go. These are the dates locked in.
Yeah.
Which hopefully, I was hoping to have it done by today, but I got to assume within the next few days, at the worst case, by the middle of next week, everything should be finalized. Which, to be honest, end of May, a lot of people in normal years aren't even booking their flights and the hotels until around now. Anyway, I know the adult teams for sure aren't. So we usually have tryouts going until beginning of June. So not a big deal where we're at right now. Good thing is flights are cheap, hotels are dropping prices and whatnot, because obviously they've all been hurt by all this. So they want the business. So we'll get things going soon, and I'm real confident about it. We're gonna have a kick-ass tournament, and even with the pro division guys, it's with Norwich East being canceled, I don't know what's happening with tours yet. I know I talked to Ron the other day. They're still working on stuff. I hope that thing gets off the ground in Florida. But there's a chance our pro division might be the main. It's always the biggest pro division and the toughest and the best one, but it may be one of the only ones to play in this summer, possibly. Who knows? What other ones are out there?
Yeah.
Especially on the East Coast. So, just working hard on getting that all right, and it's it'll be fun, for sure. And I'm excited for the summer. These last few days, the weather's getting a little warmer here, Greg, in New York.
Yeah.
So it makes things so much better. And I know, like just playing tennis, it was just great to get outside and just run around a little bit in the sun.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Fauda at all, or what? What a great show. Tim and I have been going back and forth watching a show on Netflix called Fauda. And it's kind of like we kind of compare it to Homeland, but it's been pretty good. 3 seasons so far, and I think we're both already up to season 3. Did you finish?
Actually, I finished last night.
Yep.
Yeah, anyone that's interested in like that political, I don't know,
warfare,
type, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the hardest part with it, it's all in like Hebrew or Arabic, so you have to use the subtitles or the dubbing. I use the subtitles and read it. I'm used to that from like Narcos Mexico and all these shows, reading the subtitles. But it's basically it takes place in Israel, and it's all about the Israeli conflicts with the Palestinians, and just the Arab issues with the Jewish people and all the stuff, you know, in the West Bank and whatnot right there. So all the conflict that goes on constantly and the battles there, which I made a joke a few weeks ago that I'd rather live where I live here in America with COVID issues than live there during normal times. It's just nuts what goes on there in that country.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I feel really bad for a lot of people in that country that have to deal with the stuff that goes on, but it's a really good show.
Yeah,
If you're looking for a
action-packed.
Netflix show, highly recommend Fauda. Again, if you could deal with subtitles and whatnot, really good show. Definitely give it an A on the on my rating on that show.
Yeah, definitely agree. Love the action there. I actually watched a movie last night. It was like Miss Missy or something. I don't even know. It was just it was a comedy.
Okay.
It's pretty good last night. It was on Netflix. Definitely, I recommend it if you want to get a good lap, and it's like an hour and a half long.
Okay.
But it was pretty good. But yeah, other than that, is our guest ready? Is he in the waiting room or what?
He's not here. I told him 1:15, so
Okay.
you know, he's not in yet. So we'll have him on in a few minutes. You know, today I like to talk a little bit about, you know, the PAMA Pro division. You know, the hardest thing for me when we talk about this stuff is obviously because I coach one of the teams in it. Makes you kind of feel a little awkward, like talking about, you know, favorites or the teams or players you like or don't like, or, you know, who you think's going to win, who you think shouldn't be in the division and whatnot. It's really tough having those conversations as not just a tournament director, but also as a coach in it. And obviously don't want to be biased or whatnot. So this, you know, our guest today, you know, he coaches the division as well. So we'll get his opinions on some stuff, and maybe we'll answer some tough questions. It'll be nice back and forth and put each other on the spot a little bit about the division. And then, you know, let's talk a little bit about maybe, you know, people are always talking about how do we change the pro division, rule changes and whatnot. Everyone's got an opinion. So maybe we'll talk a little about that, like ideas with the sport and where we're at and how we can make things better, or if it's great just the way it is. You know, I'd love to get some feedback on that. And obviously any of the people back home, if you have a question you want to hear an answer to, you want to put any of us on the spot, you know, chime in on YouTube with a question or shoot a text or whatnot, email, and we'll try to answer you. You know, I don't mind being put on the spot with a question. So you could always ask one to us, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. And hope you guys have been enjoying these podcasts. You know, it's a lot of work that goes into them. Today's probably gonna be the most relaxed one out of all of them. You know, normally Greg and I put in a ton of work, obviously, and hopefully it proofs in the putting of you guys watching it with the videos and the pictures and the information about each player. And it takes hours and hours to get these podcasts set. So today's gonna be a little bit more laid back, which is nice. And then next week we'll get back into our normal guest routine. You know, we had a bunch of different people interested in coming on. Today just didn't work out. It was a great day for a lot of different people we want to have on. So we're going a little bit of a different route today, but I think it'll be just as fun. You know, got a cocktail today, a little Heine Light in my State Wars koozie. What do you got on the little shandy today, Greg?
Yeah, summer shandy.
Okay.
Once our guest comes on. Yeah, I don't think people realize how much work we actually put into these podcasts. It's funny, Tim and I will do our research and then usually meet up the night before on a Zoom call and just review everything. And then the next morning before the Zoom call, the actual podcast, we'll just review again just to make sure we got our I's dotted and our I's dotted, and T's crossed. So yeah, we put a lot of work into our research and trying to find old pictures and videos and all that fun stuff. So definitely.
Right, you got a message here from Mama T. Wants to know, do you want macaroni and cheese? She put up on YouTube. So I'm assuming that went out to you. So Mama always looking out for GT.
Yeah, right. She's out of her mind. I'm just trying to open it up right now. Yeah, who doesn't like macaroni and cheese? Why not, right?
And my kids love it.
Yeah.
It's funny, you know, with everyone that's been on this podcast, we always get a text like 20 minutes after they're off. And then we get the same comment like, wow, that was fun. You know, and, or I didn't realize, or the time flew by and wow, that was great. Just like Dave Zarum the other day, just, you know, getting in a time machine and going back and looking at old pictures and whatnot. And you even seen a couple of our guests get a little emotional. I mean, CJ Yoda got a little emotional looking at old pictures and ones of his son and whatnot. And I think Zarum even choked up a little bit. I don't know if it was the one with his son, the picture, or one of them. So
Or the Korean kids. Yeah, he
yeah,
really liked
so
that one.
it's pretty cool seeing the old. I love the old photos, especially. That's why I really want to unleash those 2005 photos.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Yeah. So any updates on that?
No, I never got an email back from the guy, but a
Okay.
good friend of ours, Nick Pranito. You
Yep.
remember Nick, right? He
Yeah.
wrote me and he said he was going to contact me pretty soon, and he thinks he could do it for us. So I'll have
Okay.
to touch base with him pretty soon if he doesn't reach back out to me. But yeah, he's big into the video and editing type thing. So
Okay.
maybe one day might even have him at State Wars doing some stuff for us. So we'll see.
Just got a
And
question here on YouTube. Will there be international teams at State Wars? That's a great question. Obviously with everything else, I can't give a definite answer on that. I would assume if I was a betting man that I wouldn't count on too many international teams this year, just because of the borders closed in Europe and other countries and when it's going to get open and how quickly they'd have to get flights booked and whatnot. I mean, if you consider Canadian teams international, I think we'd have teams from Canada, but I would assume this would be the year to be more North American based. We know the teams all wanted to come, and we actually had new countries coming this year, but I would say this summer would probably be the one I would say no, and have them just start planning now for 2021, just because their borders aren't even open yet to travel into the United States. So who knows when that's going to happen, and it may just be too much of a last minute thing or too expensive for them to do at that point. So I would think not, but again, we're still 2 months away, so things can always change. But I see our guest, our guest Greg is in the waiting room here. So let's bring him on here and let's have some fun today.
oh,
Gentlemen, this is PJ Cavalla, the voice of State Wars Hockey, and you are watching the SWH podcast brought to you by Glass Half Full Productions.
Am I in?
Drink soon.
All right. Well, that was the voice of State Wars Hockey, PJ Cavalla. Welcome in here for our SWH podcast number 14, our special guest today and our first repeat guest. We're struggling to get guests, and we got to bring this guy back on twice.
Listen, it's like when you bring Hulk Hogan back to Raw. It's all about ratings.
Got our buddy here from Black Ice, Jason Muro. How you doing, buddy?
What's going on, Tim?
Let's raise a glass here. Let's get a little cheers to everybody.
Boys.
Okay.
what are you watching in the background, Jay?
Jay, mute whatever you got in the background.
Oh, sorry. It's Bar Rescue. I love John Taffer.
Yeah, I actually, Tim, right?
Yeah.
You were with me. We saw him in the airport one day, actually going to Barcelona, I think.
Yeah, we were in the Delta Sky Club, relaxed, having a few cocktails, and he walked in with his hat pulled down with his wife and sat a few feet from us. So it's a face you don't miss. So we knew it was him.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
How
How's your day?
How you
How's your
doing,
day
Jay?
been, Jay? All right.
So far, so good. Got some stuff done. Ran around a little bit. Shopped for Mom. Cleaned the house a little bit. Took care of these animals, and now I'm just relaxing.
All right.
Cool.
Do you get any kind of updates on rink opening at Rapid Fire yet? Have you heard anything? Or
I went down there yesterday and talked to Vinny. He was talking like August, September.
okay.
As far as I know, that's what he was. That's what he was hearing. But we won't know for, I guess, a little while.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's funny how some states are different. Here in Long Island, it's just New York State is just one of the ones definitely moving the slowest, and at New York City being hit so hard, and not a big shocker, New York City, how people live there.
Yeah, no, we have the most cases, so I figured we'd probably open back up when the kids go back to school, because then they're going to allow kids to. We're only going to open, I think, if we can do everything. Like if we can just do men's hockey, we're not going to open for 3 hours a week, 3 hours a night. There's no way we could pay our bills.
Right.
So, but that's we have no plan in place. I'm just waiting for them to let me know what we're doing.
Right. And that's the reason why, we haven't talked about this too much on this podcast. Everything's still up in the air, but that's why, we're actually talking to Fort Wayne about State Wars this summer, is because, in Michigan, much like New York, nothing's really going on there yet right now. And it's been very slow getting things open, where, in Indiana, the rink there is opening up end of May for their roller hockey program and June 1st for their ice hockey program, to starting their phases of practices and whatnot. And then the governor had announced July 4th, the state's opening up their last final phase for full openings on restaurants, bars, hockey arenas, amusement parks, pools, whatnot. So that's why we've been talking to them about, if things aren't going to open up in Michigan, about having State Wars there, because the rink will be open over a month before our tournament's even which, obviously is good news for us.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I figured it'd probably be in Indiana over Michigan. I can't see Michigan doing, they have their problems just like we do there, but Indiana, they weren't hit as hard. So obviously they're going to open up way sooner.
Yeah. Indiana's just an area, it's less rural, it's more rural, less populated, a lot more space. And as you know, from being there multiple times at State Wars, I feel like when we're there, everywhere I go, I just run into other State Wars people. I feel like there's no one else that really lives there besides us when we're there. So it's just like a perfect place for us to go. So yeah, we're just waiting on, what we're doing on our end, to be honest, is we've filed all the things with the rank. They want us to be there. They've sent a letter of all the details to whoever authorities they need to get final approvals. This way we don't have like an issue mid-tournament, like someone showing up going, hey, I didn't realize you were all these people here. So we're getting all the final approvals now so we can move forward, and any parameters we may have to follow, like we may have to add locker room assignments and whatnot to keep a locker room being cleaned after every game. So you need like 6 locker rooms per rank or whatnot. So they're putting together all the parameters with that for us so we could finalize things, but I'm feeling really good about that.
Yeah, no, I figured if any event gets off this summer that they'd be different,
parameters.
Different than any other year we've gone away, just trying to make sure that, everybody's safe and whatnot. So I figured all that.
You taking us into the dungeon, Jay? What are you doing?
No. I had to take care of something with the dog. Sorry.
Like toilet Zoom or something for a second.
I'm back.
So let's jump in, Jay. I wanted to make today a little bit more light. I was saying before you came on, I wasn't sure if you were watching that. It's tough when we talk about stuff. If you and I were talking privately right now, obviously we could say whatever we want, but when you're on live, it's hard, especially in my position. I coach in the division, you coach in the division. We start talking about PAMA Pro. You don't want to offend anyone. You don't want to come across as just talking about your own team or whatnot. So it's hard to answer questions or whatnot, but I want to try best we can to have a pretty open forum about just the PAMA Pro division. Let's look forward to this summer, assuming that we have a PAMA Pro division as we plan on. Obviously, there's a lot of great teams out there. There were some changes, some things shooken up a little bit, and just want to get a little feedback from you before we dive into the actual teams themselves. I know there was a conversation a few weeks ago on Roller Dad News about rule changes and whatnot, and everyone's got an opinion, that. And I gave my opinions with George Brown that day about what I felt about some of the potential rule changes people brought up. But I want to see on your end, as someone who's been a part of the PAMA Pro division all these years and just Pro division, the Tours, Narch, and a coach of definitely one of the best teams in the game. What do you think about the sport right now as far as, say, let's talk pro right now? Do you like where the game is at? Do you think there needs to be rule changes? If so, what are they? And just get your thoughts.
To be honest with you, rule changes, not really. I mean, I've enjoyed the game. I mean, through the years, it's changed where sometimes there's you have, time behind the net where you can't stand there for 5 minutes anymore or kill a penalty, or, you have to, once you delayed call, the goalie comes off, so it's changed through the years and whatnot, but I've always thought the game of roller hockey is pretty much a game of keep away. You're using the whole rink to keep the puck away from the other team, and using your smarts to eat up as much time as possible. Watching when I first started coaching, watching teams like Roller Dragons and the Snipers and Bulldogs and the better teams in the area. I mean, that's what they did. You just couldn't touch the puck ever. Whether they stood behind the net the whole time and waited till you chase. So, I mean, the game has changed, but there's not really, I know Pi-Ha does it where you can't stop behind the net, and it makes the game a little different. I don't really, when I'm coaching those games, I don't really see it like as a crazy different rule, but I don't know. I mean, I remember one year we won an Arch championship and the team took a penalty with 4 minutes left and we killed the clock until the game was over. We were up by 3. I think in 2005 or something like that, we did that. And I've watched a million times with you guys do that where like teams just don't touch the puck for like 8 minutes. So I don't know. I think it's all part of the game. I mean, there's no rules that I see that needs to be changed. I do like that you guys are going to institute using, replay and take some of the human error out of the game and stuff. But other than that, there's really nothing I've seen that I would say, people say you need to put a shot clock up. I've heard a million different things and, make a 2-line pass and all kinds of nonsense like that. But no, I enjoy the game the way it is. I've always, since the day I seen it, I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. The one rule change we mentioned this year, Jay, us doing also is to get rid of that delaying the puck when you pull your goalie. You have whatever it was, 30 seconds to cross the red line with the puck if you pull your goalie on a delayed penalty when you have 5 players. And if you don't, it's a whistle and the power player start. So that rule I like as well. This way you're not killing it way back. You got to at least gain the line with it. And this way it doesn't happen like what happened with the rink rat game with us, where they held the puck for an hour and a half back in the zone. So that rule I like. I think what people have to recognize in rule changes, and this is for any sport, but let's just talk about ours. You only make a rule change that needs to be made that it's something that's going to change for everyone, not just something that's going to help like one team. Like, like people talk about certain rules, and I look at some of the rule changes people want, and it's someone that's maybe on a team that can't win a game. They're thinking of a rule that maybe could, make it easier for them to hopefully contain, be closer in a game or whatnot. That's not why you make a rule change. You make a rule change that's going to make the game better for everyone, and that's needed in the sport. And some of these rules out there are just ridiculous. Like, I don't see how a shot clock really would change anything. And rinks don't even have shot clocks. So it's just kind of something that probably wouldn't even work, But I'm with you. I love the game where it's at. The only things that I was thinking about that I could see making the game a little bit better and things that probably couldn't happen was, one, I did like at World Championships. I did actually like the smaller nets again. But that doesn't really change much because everyone's using the same net. So whether that's a foot bigger or a foot small, it could be a soccer net. It's still the same for everyone. So I don't really think that changes the game too much. But when I was playing in an ice hockey tournament this last year, I might have brought this up to you. It was a fundraiser for a referee that had passed away. And because it was running clock, the tournament, what they did was you couldn't make a line change on a whistle until when there was a whistle. You could only make a line change during play. And it totally changed the game. And for running clock, it definitely made sense because, you could do those slow changes every whistle and kill clock or whatever. But, maybe even in our game, I don't know, if you couldn't change at a whistle, does that make it harder, But then again, I don't know how that really helps the game for anybody, So I kind of
but we also play stop clock. So we play stop clock, so I don't think it matters in that.
But it's harder to change on the fly. You know what I mean? Like when you have to do it, like when I was playing in that game, I realized how much harder it is to change on the fly. So if you weren't allowed
you can't just go off when you won. Obviously, you have to use your head.
So when you can't change on a whistle, it changes the game. I just don't know if it makes the game better for us. So I think the game's pretty awesome how it is. And I've been to IHF with the offsides. I've played Fears on a smaller net. I don't know. I just think the game's pretty good. And I watch PAMA Pro, except for maybe 1 or 2 teams once in a while. Like every game's pretty damn tight. So I don't really know what we got to change.
Well, you have those random things that happen. Like obviously last year, like you said, in the rink rat game, they came up with a strategy like, hey, the game's close. If we can kill 8 minutes off the game, and shorten the game up where it's all about somebody coming down and hitting a shot to win. I mean, obviously they made that move with the intentions, from a strategic standpoint, but that's not happening every game. I mean, I don't think you could watch 10 PAMA Pro games in a row or 10 games period and say this definitely needs to be done because this happens every time. Like, every game's different. I was one of the people that actually found it quite amusing that they were standing there with the puck. Like I totally understood what they were doing, but obviously for people just watching the game, I mean, obviously we've always talked about it. Like at times it can be a boring game with, people just standing around. I mean, I remember years ago, Greg was playing for me and I think we were playing the Nightmare at Sports Arena and they were standing behind the net and Greg was on both knees in front of their goal. And this went on for like 20 minutes. And I always remember that because we always laugh about it. But, there's always those instances where certain things happen that don't happen all the time. But, I understand the rule with the rule change with the goalie pull. I actually think it is good because it stops that from happening. But again, it's something that happened once that stands out because the team did it for, X amount of minutes where instead of just killing a minute and a half and then getting in the zone, they said, screw it. We're going to try to kill the whole period or whatnot. But,
Yeah, I agree. I'm a purist, so I like the game the way it is. And I mean, I do like the new rules. with pulling the goalie and having the 30 seconds. But yeah, other than that, I like the big rinks. I like the big nets. Gives me a little more time out there, time and space, and
yeah, I don't think I'd like the smaller nets. I think that would aggravate me. I don't like guys miss the net enough with the nets being the size they are. You make them those little midget nets. Yeah, it would aggravate me.
Yeah, but guys adjust. Guys do adjust. I mean,
years ago when I made the rule change to change the penalty time, some people had questioned that a little bit, but obviously that was like a great rule change. I thought, it wound up, made sense.
It was at the time. I was like, I didn't think it really mattered until like all the years of doing it. Like it really is. It made perfect sense because, if you took 3 penalties in a period, you were down half the period, and that's, it's at the high levels. Whether it's AAA or pro, at the high levels, you give teams power play, they're going to score. So you can't be shorthanded for half the period. So I actually, like, looking back, it's funny how I think I was like, I didn't care either way about it, but it's much better with the minute and a half than it was the 2 minutes.
Yeah, I said, when we were on that podcast with George Brown, and I went back and watched it, and I was actually, usually I hate hearing myself on these podcasts, but I actually enjoyed my talk about, not changing rules. And I come back to it just saying that instead of worrying about changing rules, just get better. That's my thing. Everyone wants to change a rule to try to make it easier to beat a black ice or, a team that they have trouble with, but just get better, and I know someone had mentioned something about, rosters, locking rosters in and whatnot. And again, that's a rule that in theory makes sense, but in reality doesn't, because we don't have a season like that. There's some guys that play at state wars in the pro division that haven't played all year in a tournament, or your team doesn't go to winter nationals and a guy, PJ DiMartino, jumps on PAMA. That means he's got to be locked with them. So it just doesn't make sense for our sport the way it is to have those rules. I remember years ago, Tony Torres tried to do it with the pro division, and you had to keep a roster if you used a guy, but then I'd be there.
Yeah, didn't you have to qualify and they took your picture to make sure you were there or something? I remember that. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
And then I remember us playing the Mudcats one time, and I think it was Jamie Yoder's there, and I'm like, Jamie Yoder hasn't played all year. He's been in Hawaii, wherever he was, and
playing ice hockey.
Ice hockey. And Tony Torres was like looking at me, and I'm like, dude, so the rules weren't even followed properly, So yeah, I'm with you, Jay. I think the game, where it's at right now, is as good as it's going to get. And with the PAMA Pro division, with the longer games play out the way they're supposed to. Most of the times the team is going to win. But, in single elimination hockey, anything could happen, but at least making the games a little bit longer, you feel like, all right, we always have time to come back in this game. It's not like one goal is going to be the difference maker. It's a long game. Teams need 3 strong lines. And, I just love the game where it's at. And I think it's at its highlight right now. And, watching some of these games the last 2 years, when we've been doing this countdown of games and we're in the top 3 now of that, I feel like most of the really good games we talk about are from the last couple of years, because the game is just getting better and the talent pool is getting strong. A lot of young guys are playing and whatnot. And I think it's a great game right now.
Yeah, no. Like I said, I've loved the game since the first time I saw it. And anytime you're anywhere and you're watching the best guys play, it's always great hockey. And there are a lot of young guys out there. Like VO still has a pretty young team. Most of those kids still can't drink legally yet, and they're starting to. Last year they lost in the quarters to Palmer in overtime, and they knocked us out in the quarters at Norwich. So they definitely they're starting to rack up some real good wins and stuff like that. And they're going to be tough for a long time. And, you have that nitrous program out in California. They got a lot of young kids, and they're going to start, and the Skittle kids, and, they're going to start throwing their hat in the ring. And, like Greg says, everyone else is just getting older. I'm laughing like, some of my guys, I got a lot of guys now that in a couple of years going to be 30. That's unheard of. I coached them when they were 11 and they're going to be 30 now. It's definitely scary, but there's definitely some young guys. You have the Border Cats, they're relatively young. They still have all those, young 98s and stuff like 2000s and stuff like that. And every year it's tough because every year, my team, like guys like me, we get older and, teams definitely get younger, and I know what it's like to be on the other side of that, where you're the real young team. And I still think we're pretty young compared to most teams, you know, a lot of teams don't have a lot of youth. You know, a lot of the PAMA guys are in their 30s. I mean, a lot of your guys are in their, I mean, fucking mid-30s. Some of your old guys.
I think we're in our 50s, our team.
Yeah, I mean, it just,
Even
yeah,
PAMA,
it's something else.
you know,
Because every year you never
podcasts.
know when it's going to be somebody's time. You know, no one tapped me on the shoulder when they're like, hey, you're going to go on a run and you're going to win all these games that you don't think you can win. Like, and the same thing could happen anytime, whether it's VO or whether it's some other good young team. You know, all of a sudden this comes in and they just run the table on you and you're like, holy shit, when did this happen? But it does happen.
I mean,
I know.
I always say, Jay, you know, and I said this to, I think it was Joey DiMartino, either him or Max. I don't know which guy we said to. We had the Roadrunner guys on. That a lot of times it's just about getting that big win to get over the hump, and then it seems like you kind of start coasting. And I come back to you guys that year at Norwich when you guys you squeaked in as the 9th or 8th seed and knocked us out as the 1 seed, and we were cruising, and you came in and beat us and wound up winning that tournament for your first pro win. And who knows if we shit kick you guys in that first game like we thought we were gonna, or I didn't think so, but some of the guys did. Who knows if Black Ice wins a pro tournament the next 2 years? You don't know. Like, it's getting over that hump just breeds confidence, right? And
well, it's that it's raising individual confidence in the players, knowing that, hey, you know what, instead of looking at like I'll use Greg as an example. You know, these kids were 10 years old and Greg was, you know, doing what he was doing, and obviously he still does what he does. You know, they don't look at him as like, oh my God, it's Greg Thompson, or oh my God, it's Johnny Mack, or oh my God, it's you know, Kramer. You look at it as like, it's a guy that I'm going to try to go around. I'm going to try to win this battle. I'm going to try to beat him on a face-off. And, you know, you just start saying, hey, I can play with these guys. And you don't teach that to the guys. The guys have to figure that out on themselves, that they're equal. And in this game, like you said, anything can happen. I mean, I've said it a million times. I've won a million games I never thought I was going to win. And I've lost a million games I never thought I was going to lose. And it's the nature of the beast. It's what it is. In this game, it's all about competition. And at any point, if another team wants it more than you and you don't show up and play your A game, or the guys party too hard last night and they're looking at who they're going to play and they're like, screw it. You know, I've been guilty of that the last couple of years. You know, I've walked in the locker room and said, guys, there's no speech. We're better than these guys. Let's just shit kick them. And then I'm screaming at the guys 45 minutes later because we just lost to that team. You know, like you just never know. It's all about going out there and leaving it on the table.
Well, especially with single elimination, right? I mean, let's face it. If we're playing a best-of-7 series, I'll bet my house we win that series against you guys in that Norwich tournament, best-of-7. You know, but single elimination, anything can happen. That's what makes our sport so great. Is it's not always the best team. You know, it's the best team that game, and it's like the NFL any given Sunday. You know, and it changes things for sure, and it makes the sport so exciting that, you know, it's not the best team always. It's that game, you know, and who's come to play. And hockey is such a game of hot goaltending and hitting a post here, or that crucial goal you get. And again, you guys got that confidence from that win. And like you said, you guys beat guys that a lot of your guys looked up to. And now they're like, wow, Greg Thompson's an old bastard. I'm beating this guy. Screw Greg, you know, and now I'm the man, you know, and they get that confidence. And you guys go on to win. And that's what's kind of started the whole run for the Black Ice. So thank you for that. And, you know, the Roadrunners, I think, are in that mode right now. Like, if they win that game against Alkali last year, they blew and lost in overtime. PAMA. If they win that game, who knows? They may win that tournament last summer. You know, you don't know. Like that confidence is going to change things.
I thought at Norwich when they beat us in the quarters, I didn't think there was any chance. I'm like, holy cow, I go, V's going to go on a run here. And, I think if I remember correctly, I could be wrong. I think they lost to the Border Cats in the next round in the semi, and they, you know, and we were listening to the game, and I was just surprised because they came out and they played it so well, and I'm like, wow, these going to at least get to a final here. So the whole thing is, even if you have a big win, you have to follow that, you know. And that year, like you're talking about, like we played you in the quarterfinals, like so, like when you're walking off the rink, you're sitting there like, oh my God, like now we have to play next gen. And they beat us 6-1 in the round robin the day before, you know? So it's like all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, let's not embarrass ourselves and have them kill us and make it where beating the Snipers meant absolutely nothing. And that easily could have happened, you know. It's just, if you watch that game, Chinny was ridiculous. They hit 9,000 posts. They missed empty nets on the power play. And then next thing you know, we win 1-0 in the semis, you know, because, you know, the guys just kept grinding it out. Like it just, you can't look, you can't give a gift horse in the mouth. Like you don't want to ruin an opportunity because you never know when you're going to get it again. I mean, like us, like we've been in the PAMA Pro final every year, and we won the first year and we've lost the last 3. And, getting there is hard enough, but then you get there and it's very defeating when you get there and then you lose. It's tough because it's not easy. It's not easy to get there. And I give my guys all the credit in the world for getting there. Hopefully, everything goes this summer that, we get there again and get another opportunity to win that game.
Well, Jay, some guys are winners, right? I mean, and that's one thing. And I consider myself a winner, right? And some guys just are, and some guys aren't. And I'm a guy that I feel confident in anything I'm doing that I can win. And if I'm going to coach Team USA, we're going to win. If I'm coaching my sniper team, we're going to win. If I'm playing, I want to win. And some guys have that. And there's little decisions that go on. I remember, watching that Roadrunner PAMA game, we talked about it. PAMA Roadrunners scored late in that game to go up by a goal. And then with a minute left, there's a face-off at center ice. Now, if I'm coaching that game or I'm playing in that game, because of experience now, I know how much Greg and I and our team, we talk about face-offs and whatnot. Now, I'm thinking at that point, okay, I think they have Nick Martini on their team, who's pretty good at draws. I'm putting my best face-off guy in there, and we're talking the entire time out about, we win this face-off, we win this game. We control the puck. They can't pull their goalie. We kill clock. We win this. And I got to assume, and this is just guessing because they're such a young team, that face-off probably wasn't even talked about. They lose the draw. PAMA gets it. They pull their goalie 30 seconds if they score in the empty netter, and then they win in overtime. So that's just that experience part that comes in, where when my team was young and just rewind 10 years ago, we wouldn't have talked about a face-off then, and we would have lost that game too probably. But once you start learning a little bit more and you get that experience, little things like that become big things. And, talking about rule changes, the best part of our game right now is it allows for those young teams like you talked about, the Skittles or Nitrous or the Roadrunners, to even be factors. Because when we started, our first year playing pro was 2003. And I only remember that because it's 2002, we were in Minnesota. And I remember watching a pro game and getting our guys in the stands, and we all talked about doing a pro team the next year. But for the next few years, we had some good young players. But because the way the game was then, it was basically, you could have called a felony every 5 minutes on the ice with no call. It was impossible for a young team like us to even be a factor, so we couldn't even play the game. Now we stuck with it and took our lumps and got knocked out or didn't make the playoffs every year until we finally won years later. But the game's not like that today. Today, as a young team years ago when you first started playing the Roadrunners, whatnot, you could bring in a young kid, if a kid's that weigh $110 each, and they could be drawing power plays every 5 minutes and win a game. So that's where the game has evolved now, much like the NHL has, and it's really a skill game.
It's faster, and it's much more skilled than it was back then. I mean, not taking anything away from those guys that played back then. I mean, obviously they were awesome, but you could kill the guy I just remember watching games like, my Lord. I mean, I remember at tours, you could used to hit against the boards, and you're watching guys like Chad Siebel and some of those rink rat guys just absolutely maul people. I remember watching a game saying, you couldn't pay me money to stand in front of that net right now. I would not be anywhere near it because guys are just getting destroyed.
I always see guys bragging about the old rink rat team or an old mission team or whatever back in the day, how they, were the best in the game and whatnot. Now, listen, this is God's honest truth. I was coaching the game back then when our team wasn't good, and I coach it now. The top teams today would shit kick those teams. Okay. Our sniper team back in the day maybe had 2 to 3 pro players on it, what I would consider pro players, Greg Thompson and Derek Kern. And we had a bunch of role player guys, and we were 1-2 goal games with the best teams in the game then. Our sniper team today would have scored 15 goals on our old sniper teams back then. And it's not even close, the skill level. So the game today is just so much more skilled. It's like watching the 94 Rangers video in the Stanley Cup year, and it looks like we could have played in the NHL back then compared to the speed out there today and the skill level of the NHL. It's just a different game.
Yeah.
I wish somebody did so they didn't win.
Matt Whites, the Travis Snows today, the PJ DiMartinos, the Tyler Spezias, the the top kids in the game, the Brandon Hawkins, the Shane Foxes,
Kyle's,
all those kind of plays, Alex Kyle, those guys they would abuse those older teams. Like just the level of play. And I've talked about this with Rob Chernovan and Joe Cook, and they all agree. The game today is just so much more talented than it was back then.
Well, yeah, it's just different.
Skating was different. I mean, skating, everyone I felt like was like so flat-footed back then, for the most part, but all those guys could shoot the puck. All of them could shoot the puck. I mean, there was a lot of old school ice guys that couldn't really skate well,
but they could rip.
They could rip the puck, and they were mean and tough, and you didn't want to go in the corner with them. But boy, yeah.
If they called the game like they do today with those teams would be in the box all game long.
They wouldn't even be in the division. I mean, they wouldn't be able to hang.
They'd be shorthanded all game long. The way they used to swing the sticks.
It's just like the NHL. Everything changed.
It's a different game. You're right.
And it's a young man's game, and it's a fast, skilled, high-paced game. Back then, it was more of a clutch and grab and kill you, and it was a man's game, right? I guess it was more of a man's game. But nowadays, it's more about the speed and the youth, and a mixture of a little bit of both. So.
Now, Jay, do you like the idea of the PAMA Pro, that it's an invite only, that it's an invitational division as opposed to just because I always make the same joke about there's pro teams out there, fake pro. Do you like the idea that those pro teams can't play and that it's just the top of the end guys and it's limited? Do you like that?
I do, because it makes it where you're never missing a team. Like if you could go somewhere else and the snipers aren't there, or PAMA's not there, or RPD's not there, like ever since you did State Wars, at least all the top teams, they make sure they go every year. You get
one team the first year.
Yeah, well, I think you guys came out with it in May that you were doing it, and it just wasn't gonna. It didn't work out for us, and no one was really supposed to go until everyone started getting their stuff paid for to go fly out there. So I wasn't doing that. I wasn't flying Chinny out there like the Mudcats did.
For the record, we didn't fly KJ or Billy out.
Well, KJ don't need anybody to fly him out. Trust me.
So I think I interrupted you. Sorry, Jeff.
I think KJ flew me out that year.
Yeah, he might have, but I just remember like Matt and Nate had their brother-in-law's bachelor party that weekend. And we had a couple of guys who couldn't go. And obviously we weren't going to go unless everyone was going, even though 6 or 7 of them wound up out there on teams and whatnot. But no, it's just like every year it's you get those teams and then you have to play someone in the round robin. Like last year, our first round robin game was against RPD. We've played Palmer in the round robin before. Like, when you go to some of these other tournaments, you don't, because there are some of those, I'm going to call them second tier pro teams, guys that are trying to get their feet wet, trying to see what they can do. And again, putting the best team possible that they can put together. Not everybody has your Rolodex or my Rolodex or our connections or Palmer's connections. And some of these teams actually, can fly guys out and make it a little cost efficient for players to get out there. You don't get a round robin where you're playing RPD and the Border Cats, or RPD and the Mudcats, or Palmer and, Revision one year we had to play, like it all depends, I mean, what makes it so good is that every game's important. You really don't have an easy game. Like even when you're playing one of the invited teams that normally don't make the playoffs, it's still a little harder than some of the games you'll play elsewhere where you can get lucky and beat somebody 8-0 or something like that. Like you don't get too many mercies at State Wars. I'm sure there's probably just been a handful, but the invite only makes it where you're going to play against the best teams, and those guys are going to do whatever they can to field the team. Like when they're missing a guy, they'll pick up, the next best guy and whatnot, and that makes it, that makes it harder,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. And let's talk about the teams that were on our list to try to get in this year, and let's talk about these teams. These are the teams that didn't qualify in the top 8. So either played last year or didn't play last year, but have reached out about wanting to play. So the teams on my list right now.
This isn't going to get edited, like whatever. Like it's not going to edit.
We're live right now, Jay.
We're live, baby.
All right, let's go.
So we have the Connex team, Connex Pure, that last year went 0-4. So they didn't qualify. The year before, I believe they went 2-2. Had a rough year last year, but obviously they want to come back. The Alkali Grizzlies, who played last year, won one game, their first game. Then you have the Excitement team, Bar Down Excitement, George Brown's group. They want to come back and play. And then you have the new group, the Detroit Rink Rack group. So when Rink Rack kind of split up a little bit, the Michigan guys, Corey Hodge and Ryan Perry and some of those guys started their own group out of Detroit, and they were supposed to be at Winter Wars with that team. Then the Liberty group out of Winter Wars, Anthony Merrigan, some of the revision guys and whatnot, and they were going to be playing in that Winter Wars tournament also to showcase their team to want to play. They had reached out about wanting to play. Then you got the Inferno group, as you know, some of those guys as well. Tyler Davis and whatnot from Pittsburgh. Their group, from the Pie Heart group, obviously always a pretty good group of guys. They work their butts off, tough to play against. They had reached out about wanting to come play. And is anybody else, Greg? I think that's everybody.
I think that was it, Tim.
Yeah. So obviously not counting international groups like Sweden or anyone right now this year. So right there, so you got ISCA, you got Inferno, you got Detroit, you got Excitement, you got Connex. So that's 5 groups right there.
Liberty. Yep.
And Liberty, 6. So let's just get some thoughts there in general. Obviously, they're all kind of in the same boat, I would think, in some degrees, all those teams. I would love to see sometimes, I always talk about, I wish some of those teams to put their heads together and maybe merge and take the stronger half of both teams together and go and figure out a way to even strengthen their teams. Because it is tough being that 9 through 12 team coming in.
Usually, like you said, with teams like that, like the second tier teams, if you will, they just don't have the number of guys that get more done on the rink than not. And that's the biggest problem. I mean, if you take out Connex, Connex going 0-4 that was surprising to me. I mean, when we play Connex, they always give us a good game. I actually think they have a pretty young team. Most of their guys are in their mid-20s. Them going 0-4 was surprising. So I'd assume they'd be back.
It speaks for the strength of the division, right? I mean, the fact that
100%. I mean, I've played them in winter nationals and through the summers and stuff like that. I mean, at Narch, and I think a couple of years ago in Narch in Atlanta, I think you were in overtime with them. I mean, they normally have a pretty good team. The Rink Rat team
given us a tough game twice.
The Rink Rat team, obviously it's different when, like you say, they're a new team, but they're a bunch of guys that have always played. They got guys on their team that have won the event before. So they're definitely a step up from the other people that are just putting teams together. When you look at a team like the Inferno, they got 3 or 4 young kids on that team that are exceptional. Like Jared Gerger is an exceptional hockey player. Ryan Sabozley, Noah Lisko, those 3 kids play for me in juniors and D1. I've used Jared in pro before. Like those 3 kids are going to be good. Like I think they are the three of the best 2000s out there. I think they're going to be really good. And then Tyler does what he can, with whatever he has else to wrap a couple of guys with them, and they go out there and they skate and they give you a game. Liberty shows up. I mean, they have their main 2 or 3 guys, like Merrigan's always there and whatnot. But again, it just never deep enough. Like they need to go beyond their area and maybe even get some guys that used to play on the old revision team out in California and try, like you said, like it's about beefing it up. You need a lot of bullets in your gun to win these things, and you can't show up to a tournament with a couple of bullets. The key with a lot of those teams that constantly send their shut up. Hey, shut up.
Sorry, Jay, it's like one of my favorite lines from the Untouchables. You can't show up to a gunfight with a knife either.
No, right? like the whole thing with some of these teams is realistically, they don't show up at rosters that can do more than maybe win a game. And that's the honest to God truth. I don't want to call anyone out on it because I know what they're trying to do, and I'd be trying to do the same thing if I was them. But at the end of the day, they show up with different rosters every year. They keep a base of guys. They grab a couple of guys when they can. But realistically, if you look at a lot of those teams' win-loss record over the last 3 or 4 years, if they participated in the tournament, outside of a surprising win, facts are facts. If you take their other games and their scores and whatnot, you'll see that they're losing games by 5-6 goals. Like it's not like they're battling everybody, and understandable because I don't think there are 12 good pro teams playing roller hockey right now. I don't, I mean that, but I like that they get invited. They get a chance to see what they can do. But the key is, like you said, for these teams, they have to branch further out and not think that they can put a team of 8-9 guys together with 8-9 guys from their area and do well. Because if you really look at all the top teams, no one does that. No one has 8-9 guys from the same area. I mean, my team, obviously we got Long Island, we got Pennsylvania, we have Jersey. We keep everything together outside of Daniel Inouye, who's our only West Coast player. You always had that contingent of New York and St. Louis guys, and now it's branched out. Yeah, to me, it's just, I don't know. It's too hard when you see the teams that I don't want to say not do well, but don't get to a semifinal. Because to me, if you get to a semifinal in this event, that's an accomplishment. If you get, if you're not one of those teams constantly getting there, then you're showing up with something that can't get there. Like, it's not gonna, like, some of those teams are not young teams that I think are going to be eventually good. I think they have basis of guys on their team that eventually going to be good, but I think they're going to be good for better teams. I think eventually a better team's going to ask one of those guys to play, and, they're going to take their chance.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, because what I would do if I was those teams is, one, I would try to keep my team together and keep getting better together. And yeah, it may take 3-4 years to finally win games, but to your point, a team will come and then next year, like, half the team is different, and it's like you're almost looking for that secret ingredient that's going to get you a win. And nothing replaces just, being able to play well as a team. And your team was a good example of that. Yeah, you have talent, but there was a time where your team, will get beat up a little bit in the pro division, and then eventually you guys get better and better together. Roadrunners, same thing. The core of guys are the same. And in the PAMA Pro division, and I talked about this with Nick Boyarsky on our podcast, I believe, you need to be 3 lines deep in the PAMA Pro division. So the difference maybe between the top half and the bottom half to me is, yeah, maybe your top lines are kind of not always equal, but everyone's got a good top line and maybe even have a pretty decent second line. But if teams like us, like, we're roll 3 lines, and if your third line is well below standard and you're going out there against a team that's got a pretty damn good third line, you're going to lose the game every single time,
Well,
and you can't play this division with 8 guys.
Well, like you talked about before, like you talked about, like, 2 of these guys getting together. Like, I would think, and it's very hard because you have to put ego aside. You're asking for help. It's not all your guys. You have to get rid of someone that maybe you love coaching and loves being a part of it. That's not one of your top 4 guys. I think 3 of these guys should get together and put something together, because, like you said, like, these guys are showing up, and a lot of these teams are based on their bottom roster is not pro. They're not pro players. They're somebody's friend. There's somebody that played pro 5 years ago. There's someone that plays PIHAR or AIHL or whatnot. Like, they're not real pro guys. And the whole thing about sticking together, that only works if you're young. Like, if you're the nitrous kids, if you're 16, 17 years old and you're going to stick together to your 23. Like, guys on some of these teams are guys that are in their late 20s, early 30s. They're married with kids. You're not practicing. You're not going to all the pro tournaments out there. You get together, you get in the car, you're driving to Indiana, you're driving to Michigan, whatever you're doing, you're playing pro for a weekend. Like we played the Liberty last year in Detroit, and they had 6 guys at their first game, and we played them with 6 guys. Now, I'm sure things happen that they weren't aware of, and obviously guys showed up, but they didn't have their full team till day 2.
Right.
You can't show up anywhere with six guys and play. Like, that's the whole thing I'm saying. Like, a lot of this, if they stick together, that's not true. I could play, Timmy, you could grab a bunch of 40-year-olds and we could play pro every year. And if we stick together, we're still going to get our asses kicked every year. Like, it's right. Nothing's going to make that better for us, but it's guys separating and just taking, hey, you know what? I'm George Brown. I'm going to call so-and-so and so-and-so. And I have a plan of, this guy can get this 4 guys. This guy can get these 4 guys. I can get these 4 guys. Now these are 12 guys, and we're showing up with a much better team than if I just tried to do it by myself.
Yeah.
And that would be the key. You will know, like, what's the best a team that got you let in did in the tournament. Like, how many of those teams ever have gotten out of the round robin? I'm sure it's a low number. If it's
Conix, right? Conix has.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the one thing, Jay, I come back to, though, and this is playing the other side of the coin, is when I look at a Grizzly team or an excitement team or say a Connex team, even in years where they went 0-4 or 1-3, when I look at scores of games and I see they played the Snipers 3-1, or they lost 4-3 to Black Ice, or they lost 6-3 to PAMA or whatever, then at least I come out of it going, you know what? At least they're there. Like they're close. And if I was their coach, that's what I'm coming away with going, all right, I just played Snipers, or I played Black Ice or PAMA or Alkali or two of those teams and whatnot, and we were in the game with them. We didn't win the game, but it was a 1-goal game or a 2-goal game. At least I know we're close. Where if I'm coming out of that tournament and the games are 8-0, 9-1, 8-2, like then I'm going, shit, I'm way over my head.
Yeah, but some of those, that's happened to those teams. I've seen some of those teams get beat up a little bit here and there. I mean, it's just not.
They're not consistent. Yeah.
I mean, look at George
Like,
Brown one year. George Brown beat Alkali in a shootout. And then the next game, I think PAMA shit kicked them the next game.
He got mercy the next 2 games, and then we played him the last game, and I think we beat him like 9-2 or something like that. But again, it shows you that anything can happen in one game, but it's going there, knowing that the 4 teams. And I don't really put Connex in the same category as those teams. Connex has had success. Connex has been in the quarterfinals at the tournament before. I just think with these other teams, like you said, I just don't know if they're willing to do what it takes and put the work in to do it. Because another thing is, if you look at the guys they use, they're doing it with guys that have never won at any level.
Right.
I agree.
They didn't win in 14 and under, 16 and under, 18 and under. They were playing gold or silver, and and I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm just saying it's like people sit there and they'll use, like, if you look at the Snipers and you look at that roster, okay, those guys have played at a high level their entire life of roller hockey.
Right.
Like my guys have played at a high level. We always played AAA with those guys. Like we were always winning national championships or losing in the finals. Like we were always relevant in their years. And now through the years, people quit. And now I have the best of my 95s to 90s, and that forms my pro team. And that's why, these are guys that have constantly won and stuff like that. These other teams don't have that.
Well,
they don't have
like, so many of those guys. But that's why, look at it. Think about this. Look at the NHL or any pro sport. If the Edmonton Oilers are really bad, how do they suddenly get good? They draft a McDavid, they draft a Hall, like they get draft picks and they bring in young guys that change their team. They're not necessarily making trades for 40-year-old guys that are going to change their team. So if I'm one of these teams, I'm going out there and I'm looking for some young talent that's not playing on a pro team, that maybe is a little young, but they're good. And I'm starting to bring those guys in. I had this conversation with Dan Maxwell about Rink Rat. Rink Rat. Let's look at Rink Rat for a minute. Over the last couple of years, I feel bad for those guys. They beat you guys in the finals. They win the biggest tournament in the world. They come off a high. And then the next year, Junior Cadiz and the goalie, Tommy Tartaglione, leaves the team. Things happen. Fine. Then now last year, now Etan had left the team to go to PAMA. So now arguably 3 of their most important players have left the team in the last 2 years after coming off a win, which if I was their coach, it'd be really frustrating. But I've told Dan, and Greg has told Dan, you know what, Dan? Instead of trying to grab these guys from all over the place that you're talking about, talk to those Skittles guys. Talk to those Nitrous guys. You have so many young, awesome hockey players in California that are not playing on teams like the Snipers or Black Ice or Alkali or PAMA or the Border Cats or whatnot. Grab some of those guys. That's what I'd be doing. I'd be grabbing 4 young guys and building a team with those guys.
But the key is getting those guys and having a relationship with them where they'll stay, where they won't leave because Tim McManus from the Snipers asks them to play, or one of my guys asks the kid to play. Like, that's the hardest thing, is you pretty much, some of these teams, unfortunately, they groom the young player for someone better to take.
Yeah, but honestly, think about that for a minute. How many times do you see guys like we've hardly added a player the last couple of years, like Jaden Guzman? He's a perfect example. He's playing with us now, and you can make an argument last year by the playoffs, he was one of our best players. Okay. Now he was our youngest guy by a landslide on our team. Okay. Now, no one had picked him up. Okay. We asked him to play. He's not playing with anyone. It's, mind-boggling to me how he wasn't on a team, but he wasn't. Okay. There's guys out in California that watch him every single weekend in a tournament that plays. He's clearly the best player. No one asks him to play. He comes and plays with us. Now, that doesn't happen too often. How often are you asking some young guy that's been groomed somewhere else to play with you? How often is Joe Cook grabbing a young guy from a team? No one's doing that. So guys just need to get some guys. Like if I'm that Rink Rat team or another California team, I'm grabbing 4 of those Skittles guys who dominate the 01 division for years. And now 01s are 19 years old. Okay. Greg Thompson was playing pro at 19. I'm grabbing these guys
17
and saying, hey, let's build something here and let's get going. And you know what? Worst case, so what if they leave 2-3 years later? Who cares? I'm worried about right now. I want to get younger and better. And again, the way the game is called today, you could win games with young players. You don't need that KG veteran on the team necessarily, you know. But that's what I'd be doing. And that's what I think some of these teams do. And Greg will tell you this. Every year, the funny part is when teams have to give us a roster of potential rosters to get in the PAMA Pro, there's always at least 4 or 5 guys' names that appear on 2 or 3 different rosters that we just named, you know. But like Dennis, so-and-so's on George's roster. George, so-and-so's on Dennis's roster. Hey, Anthony, this guy, and they're all manufacturing the same guys all around. And it's like, hey, you know, let's get out there, guys, and let's find some other guys, you know.
It's funny. There's also a lot of good Canadian kids that guys aren't picking up as well. You know, there's that Pure Maple team that, you know, they've never tried to come to the event, but there's a lot of good players on that team, and there's a lot of good BC kids. And
yeah, we played them in January. They got 2 or 3 guys that can play.
Yeah,
so and they shoot the puck.
Yeah, so I mean, there's some guys on that team that, you know, can play at State Wars, I'm sure, that aren't playing ice hockey or whatnot, that are looking to play. You know, there's some young, good Ontario kids as well. I mean, there's kids out there. There's guys out there that.
Yeah, Jay, hold on a second.
Greg,
hold on a sec. Greg, I would jump in and say, and I bet there are guys out there that aren't in the cliques.
Exactly.
That are playing on men's teams like senior AA or platinum level teams that are better than some of these guys that always appear on pro rosters because they're buddies with guys, but they're just not in that loop, that are like studs in those other divisions. Like that PAMA platinum team.
Exactly.
That team can play pro probably. There are guys on that team that can play in the pro division, you know, like they're really good. And there are other teams that we've seen like that, you know, that can play. Some of those
Missouri teams,
guys are, you know, I mean, there's guys out there that just aren't in the know, I guess. And again, we manufacture some of the same old guys around. But again, you know, to close the point for me, I just think that if some of these guys were able to put their heads together, I think they could build some really strong teams that come out. Because what helps now is, you know, years ago when we started the PAMA Pro division, the way the teams were seeded dictated your schedule, much like Narch does it that way, and probably Tours does it that way. So if you're the 12th seeded team, you have a much harder schedule than the first seeded team, right? So if you were the lower team, you're playing Black Ice, Snipers, Alkali, like every game, and it's like, holy shit, how am I going to win a game here? But how we started doing it the last couple of years is now we seed the teams based on the year before, and we put them in pools. So if I'm in the same pool as Black Ice and I coach the worst team in the tournament and Black Ice is in it, we're playing majority of the same teams in the round robin because we're in the same pool. It doesn't really matter that he's the number 1 seed, I'm the number 12 seed. So it's not like that anymore. So you're getting a fair shake as far as scheduling goes. You'll be slightly harder because if it's an odd number of teams, maybe Jason's not playing the best team in the other bracket where I am, but I'm still playing a lot of the same teams he's playing. So you can make it work if you belong there, you know? But I think teams need to come in going, I'm not just going to be happy with going 0-4 and keeping it close or boxing it up and not losing by a lot. Or I just want to say I tied a game. Like, come in to want to win it, and let's build a team to win this thing and make a difference. Because you know what? Teams like mine, they're getting old. Like, there are old teams out there, you know, and it is single elimination. You put the right guys together and they come out hungry and don't give a shit. I really think one of these teams can make a difference.
No, but you have to understand something. And I get, like, a guy like George or Dennis or Anthony, they want to do it, but they want to do it with their guys because it's always better when you do it with your guys. Like, I'll say that. And I get that, but it gets to a point where you have to look at yourself, you know, like, you know, even me, maybe 5 years from now, we got to have be in the locker room with the guys and be like, you know, hey guys, you know, we can't do it with this anymore. Like, it's just, we're not, we're not competitive. Like it's hard, you know, it's the same way, you know, what, like going away in deck hockey. Like I'm blessed to still go away with the guys I've gone away with for 25 years, you know, and I don't want to go away with anyone else, regardless if it's winning or losing. I've won enough where it's like, all right, I rather just want to go away and play with my guys. So I get where those guys come from. It's just, they're always going to be at a disadvantage because the top 4 or 5 teams in pro are always going to have the best players. They're always going to be able to pick up the best guys. And some of these teams have money behind them. And that's something that, like, quote unquote, a mom and pop team, if you want to call it, you know, is never going to have. You know, they're going to grab their guys and a friend's friend and this guy who used to play, and they're going to try to go and try to do what they want. But to me, I wouldn't want to be a part of the PAMA Pro or go away and play pro anywhere if legitimately I didn't have a chance to win. Not saying I'm starting out, like, obviously you have to start somewhere, but if it got to a point where it's like, we just can't play at this level, like we can't win. It's very simple. I love playing roll hockey in the summer. I'm going to wait till next year when I can play 45 and over now instead of playing 35 and over still, because I'm out there chasing Greg Thompson and, you know, guys like that now in 35 and over, and JP Bilstein. And I rather wait and chase you next year and playing 45 and over. Like, it just makes you have to come to a point where, and some of these teams do it knowing they're not going to win. They just want to go away and have a great time. You get to play hockey, you get to hang out at the rink, you get to drink beers. I mean, they get to be away from their wives or their families. I mean, yeah, it's a no-brainer why people still want to go, whether they have a chance to win or not.
Well, it's funny. We had a team from Alberta last year, and they wanted to get into the PAMA Pro. And, you know, we did our due diligence, we always do, to find out who's playing and whatnot. And we talked to, you know, there's 2 guys that play on the Border Cats that are in Alberta. And they play in the league where this all-star team was going to, you know, come from. And they're both telling us, like, this team is not going to do well in the PAMA Pro division. Like, we're the best 2 guys in the league, and we're middle of the road guys in the division on the Border Cats, you know, and they're good players, but they know the division because they played in it, you know, where these other guys don't know the division. And we're talking to, you know, like my guy there, who's, you know, a great guy. And I just said to him, like, hey, play in senior AA this year. It's an Alberta group, so you can play in senior AA. And at worst case scenario, you guys kick the shit out of everyone in senior AA. You know, all right, we should have played pro, and next year you come play pro. And it's almost like, to some, it's like an insult. Like, what? Like, you know, we don't want to play that. We want to play pro, you know. And it's like, and it's funny because it's the opposite on the youth end. On the youth end, we got to fight with guys to play in the higher division. Everyone wants a sandbag and play in the lower, but in the adult division, everyone wants to play in pro, you know. I don't know if it's so they go on social media and say that they play in a division, or, you know, tell their girls they play pro hockey or whatever. But, you know, for us,
I'm sure it's some of that.
You know, we always wanted to make it the best division possible. So, you know, that's why we're so particular about the division. But I do think there are, in all those teams, there are guys that do belong. And, you know, I think if they put their heads together a little bit more, or throw it outside the box and not just think about the same old players all the time. Because if you bring the same roster every year and you're going 0-4, it's not going to change the next year. You're still going 0-4. Like, you got to think outside the box a little bit. And listen, if you're doing it just for a guys' weekend or whatnot, that's great and all, but that's not really what the PAMA Pro division is all about either, you know. And that's why every year we contemplate, is it a 10-team division this year, or is it 12? Like, you know, we did 10 the first year. Like, are there 12 teams that belong, you know? Now this year in Fort Wayne, quite honestly, I don't know. We may open it up more this year because it may be the only pro division of the summer, and, you know, we want to get guys playing. So who knows? We may make it bigger this year. I don't know. We haven't decided yet to see how things go, and who really wants to be in it. But I like that it's so selective. And the other part we haven't talked about is when some teams don't get in, those couple better players that they really have jump on other rosters as maybe second, third liners of teams that are in, and they just strengthen those teams. So now you get a team that maybe was on the cusp of being a top 4 team. They pick up 2 players from a team that didn't get in that really helped their team. And now they are, you know, a team that can maybe crack that top 4. So that strengthens divisions as well when these other teams guys jump ship on other teams.
Well, I saw that the first year, like, because my guys were spread out, like, pretty much. I think one of my guys were almost on every team. Right. You know, you had KJ and Billy. Kraft would go with the Fro. Chinny played with the Mudcats. Johnny Mack played with, was it Puck Fit Indians they were called or something like that. So my guys were pretty much spread out through the team. So obviously, you know, if one of the better teams don't go, obviously those guys are always can better teams immediately by guys picking, you know, if RPD don't go and you're picking up a Novak and Krogman all of a sudden, that should, all of a sudden you're way better than you were 5 minutes ago. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Greg.
I think one team that has adjusted very well, going back to Tim's point and getting younger and stuff, is the Border Cats. I mean, they started out, with some of their older guys, and they're always in it, and they're always in the mix, always making that quarterfinal game for the most part. Now they have, kids like Hunter Tillotson and Cal Kafuk and Glover and
No, they have a good
kids.
mixture of young and old, and they keep replacing the older guys with the young guys. Yeah, no, they've done a good job.
They've done a great job with that, and they're going to be a team that's going to be in the mix for quite some time now. For the next couple of years, for sure.
No, absolutely.
But go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off there.
No, you didn't, because now I have no idea what the hell I was going to say anyway. So
let's talk about favorites going in, Jay. I mean, obviously,
Wait, going back to that, without seeing rosters, Jay. So, if you have to pick two of those teams, in your opinion, to maybe make that PAMA Pro, schedule for next year, this upcoming summer, who would you pick?
Well, I mean, I obviously would pick Connex. I think they are a step above all those teams, regardless of what they did against those teams. I think as a whole, I know if my guys, I would worry more about playing Connex than probably some of those other teams. Again, not knowing the rosters. I mean, George has some good guys. So, I mean, depending on who he picks up, the Inferno has some really good young guys, that skate, and they get better and better every year over, a guy that's been playing forever, that's 28, that's going to be as good as he is, and he's not going to get any better than that. I don't know. Maybe Connex and the Inferno, I would say. But I don't know rosters.
What about the Michigan team?
Oh, you know what? I'm not thinking about. Yeah. Well, again, I don't put that team with the other teams. They're going to have all guys that have played through the years, just have worn different jerseys. I mean, obviously they're going to have a handful of guys that played on the Rink Rat team that won a couple of years ago. So, I mean, Rink Rat and Connex is above all the rest of the teams, then I'll say. And then after that, it's a crapshoot again. I'd have to see rosters, but again, they would have to be picking up players that they haven't just kept showing up with every year. They would have to pick up some name guys. Like, those teams need to pick up guys that are better than the guys they have. Because that's really how you make a team better. Like you lose your eighth skater on a kid's team. If you lose your eighth skater and you replace him with a guy that now's your best player or your second best player, your team is worlds better because you've gotten rid of the weakest kid, and now you have a kid that's in your top four. I mean, it's just like anything else. And I don't know if those guys have the resources or if there's even players available to pick up guys that could make that much of a difference on those teams.
And I always wish, Jay, we had the time to do, and it's just a time issue. It would be really cool if you can invite all those teams to come out earlier and play like a little mini tourney amongst themselves, and then the winners, say it was two of them, qualified into the PAMA Pro and just stayed and played with the PAMA Pro, and it was based on them all playing each other. That'd be a really cool setup. But it's all just come down to logistics, obviously.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's the same reason why, like, when winter events come and go, that teams don't participate in them. Like, there are some teams you only see in the summer. My guys want to play. They'll hit me up about everything. Like, hey, are we going here? I mean, we just went to California for the West Coast thing, for Narch in January. Like, my advice to those teams is those teams are the teams that should be going to all those things. They should be playing Winter Wars East, Midwest Wars, going out to Narch's Winners, playing tours as Winter Cup. Like, those are the teams that have to.
And they were this year. Unfortunately, this was the worst year, obviously, for things shut down. But a lot of those teams were on the schedule to come to those tournaments.
Yeah, like, that's the whole thing. And I know it's hard because a lot of guys play ice hockey and people's work schedules and stuff like that. But that's the whole key. Like, they're their own worst enemies. Like, I mean, you can't just play the one local tournament near you and then go away in the summer and expect to be good. Like, especially when you're not one of the better teams to begin with. Like, you need to be getting that experience throughout the year. So you're not using every year you go to a pro division in the summer and using that as your experience. Like, when you go to the winter events, they're lesser because people, one, not all the top teams are there. Two, top teams are missing their guys because of ice hockey or work or whatnot. And if you can get a bulk of your players there, like, that's the advice I'd give those guys. Like, get in the car and go to these things. Like, you have to be playing more talent and you get an experience by playing more and playing against those teams. You know, you don't get it by saying, okay, I got invited to PAMA Pro. I went to PAMA Pro and I went 1-3, 0-4, 0-3-1. And now I'm going to send Timmy my same bullshit roster again. And hopefully he lets me in. It doesn't make any sense.
We also forgot one team as well, Tim, Camograph as well. They were interested as well.
Camograph guys had asked.
Yeah.
But just Jay, it'd be just kind of cool. You know, New York used to do this back in the day with the gold and platinum and whatnot. But, you know, just think if you had 6 teams and they came out 2 days early and in 2 days they played 4 round robin games, just, you know, we banged them out. And then how you seeded on that, you know, 2 teams stayed and played in the PAMA Pro and the rest went home. It would be kind of cool because you're playing for your spot. Like there's no argument that you can't.
I'm sure if you did that, those teams would accommodate and come a couple of days early and get some games under their belt. And also, at least, regardless if they win or lose and move on, it would be more competitive for them. Like they're going out there kind of all being in the same boat. Maybe somebody's better than somebody, obviously. But
there's no argument as far as I can't believe Tim thought they were better than us. We're better than that team. You know, you played them,
you can prove it. It takes out you making that decision.
But then the other cool part of just talking about it out loud is you got to assume that if they played for 2 days, you know, 3 or 4 round robin games, maybe that would get them going a little bit. And when the PAMA Pro starts, they have a little bit of an advantage for them that now, you know, they played a little bit and they got their wheels going a little bit and now they're in tune and that could give them.
Well, I would definitely agree. And they can use that advantage too, the fact that they've been playing and whatnot. So it definitely works.
Yeah, no. So definitely things to think about. Maybe that's a rule change down the road, Greg, that we talk about having a little qualifier within the PAMA Pro division for teams to get in there, and if they really want to be a part of it. And that's why what I love about the seeding, Jay, is listen, when you're at State Wars, you know that holy shit, if I don't qualify in this top 8, I might not get in next year. Like, and that's a pressure feel. I know Vio's felt that before with his group, and they were a couple of years ago when they were on the bubble of like, holy shit, we got to make sure we're qualified because I don't want it to come down to, do we get in or not next year? I know that's bothering, obviously, Boyarsky with the Connics this year of, you know, he's just praying that they get in. And, you know, and it's cool to see that guys want to get in so bad, but it's no different than World Championships. If you don't qualify, you're down in a lower group and it sucks, you know? So I love that pressure of it. But yeah, no, all good stuff about the PAMA Pro. And let's talk about teams a little bit, Jay. So taking snipers and black ice out, because obviously we're both biased. Who's a team that you look at, knowing the rosters at what you've seen during the year, that you look at coming in this year as a favorite going into the PAMA Pro division? Pick one for you.
I think PAMA looks good. I think, you know, obviously they keep picking up guys. I mean, the junior was playing with them, and now they just picked up Eton. And I mean, the last year and a half, I would say Travis Snow is playing the way Travis played 3-4 years ago. I mean, he's just a dominating force. We actually played them out in Winter Nationals, and we lost 3-2 to them. And I would say them. I mean, they have a big roster, but every guy on their team can play. And when you're picking up guys like Eton and Junior and you're adding that to their team, it definitely makes them tough. I mean, they're fast. They control the puck. You know, I mean, I know goaltending's always a thing because, I mean, I'm just saying this, I could be wrong. They kind of always have a different goalie. Like, I never know who their goalie is. But they're, you know, they're good. Like, they're a solid team. I would say out of all the teams, I'd say them. And then the next team would be RPD. You know, they're a team that, it's funny. Anytime I've ever played them in a playoff game, we always find a way to win the game. But anytime we play them in the round robin, they beat us. Every time they beat us in the round robin.
Well, I want to go around the room. So you talked about PAMA. So I agree, you know, obviously PAMA's, you know, a team, and, you know, and, you know, looking at their records, we've talked about this before on past podcasts. So, you know, these guys have, you know, done fairly well going into the round robin, after the round robin, going into the playoffs each year. But, you know, the last few years, you know, so last year they lost to you guys in the semifinals 4-3. 18, they lost to Rink Rat in the semifinals 4-1. In 17, they lost in the semifinals to the Snipers 5-3. So all 3 of the last years, they've lost in the semis to the team that wound up winning the tournament. Actually, last year they lost to you guys. You guys were at least made the final. So, you know, they've had tough semifinal games, but they've gotten to the semis the last 3 years. So you figure that an Eton is a kind of player that could get them over the hump. And I'm sure for you as a coach of Black Ice, you know, you're a competitive guy. You love a good challenge. That must make you excited to know that, all right, you know, Rob Chernovan is coming for me. Like, he's building this team because he wants to win this thing. And that's got to be exciting for and I have a challenge now of a team going, all right, PAMA's always a good opponent of ours, but now they're coming even better. And you got to look forward to that matchup, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm used to it, and it's nothing to do with the pro level. Just like as through the years coaching and having some heavy birth years of teams that were really, really good. Like I've constantly had guys, like every year George Brown would grab every kid that wasn't on my team and put an excitement jersey on him and try to beat us. And sometimes he was successful. Like, so I know what it's like. I mean, obviously with us, we just run it a little differently when we always show up with our guys. And when we do pick up a player, it's, I think the last couple pickups we used at tournaments when we were short was Jared Gerger, Sean Maffei, like guys that we've used through the years or guys that are part of the family and whatnot. Like we really don't go crazy, where I would even, not that I wouldn't like to have an Eton on the team or a junior on the team, but I would never really approach those guys because I always, assume they're going to play where they are. But, when these teams pick up these guys, it makes it tough because every year it gets tough, year you beat us, Chris Terry was there and Canoni showed up and played. Like you never know who these teams are going to have, so I mean, you basically just go in knowing that, these 3 or 4 teams are going to be very, very good, and you're going to have to do your best to, what you show up with to try to beat them. I mean, PAMA, they're going for it. I mean, they're tired of, they won tours last year. They've won a couple winter nationals. I mean, I guess, they're going for the gusto. They want to win PAMA Pro. It's something they haven't done. And they're going to keep adding guys until they get there. I would assume. I mean, because to add a junior Cadiz and to add a Eton, meaning that you're telling somebody that's been on your team they're not on the team anymore. And I don't do that. I won't play somebody. They'll play a couple of shifts a tournament. But I won't look at a guy saying, hey, Matt White's way better than you, so you're out. Like I don't know. We don't do it. It just it doesn't sit well with me. I make too much I'm too, I don't know how I'm friends with my guys. Like I hang out with them, if I got married again, half of them would be in my wedding party. Like it's different for me than it is for some of these other teams. Like some of these other teams look at it as a business, they want to go, they want to win every year. They don't care what that entails. And, I'm not.
Jay, you got to be fair though. I mean, your team is pretty successful. So if you were losing every year and you had your KJs and your Billies and your PJs and your top guys all over you saying, hey, we got to get some new guys. Like these third line guys just aren't hanging. It may change how you think. If when you're winning, it's easier to stick. But you're on that cusp and you want to lose.
It wouldn't change what I think. It might change what I would do, but it wouldn't change what I think. Like my guys, like KJ and Billy and them, like they won't say that about the guys. Like they get it. Like they get that we have 12 guys and we have a good team and we have one of the better teams, but I don't have the 12 best guys. Like there's always room for improvement. If I subtracted A, B, C, D and added 4 other guys, that we could be a better team. It just, no one ever really talks about it. Like we're not one of those teams that says, hey, Eton's out there or this guy's out there. Let's ask him to play. Like, cause you can tell by our pickups. Like we don't.
Right. But you've had guys like the Eisenhowers leave. Like you've had changes a little bit here or there. But with those guys, I think, Eton especially, he's played with PAMA, and then I got to assume, like, I think back to their teams, I don't think they're really cutting guys. I think their third line have always been kind of like rotating guys, Greg, when you say with PAMA, like,
Yeah.
So I don't think they're throwing off like a long-standing player. It's more of some guys just, come and go, and then they have their solid core.
I'll say this. I'm not going to say a name or anything, but when I was out at Winter Nationals, one of their guys that have been on their team longer than most was not playing. So I just so and I don't know what the reason was, but he wasn't there and other people were. So
yeah, I know Aronson. He's obviously an unbelievable player. He plays a lot of ice hockey come August, and he's not there at State Wars. So guys like him, and I don't know if Oleski plays in the winter events. He's playing a little ice hockey now as well. So maybe they just use guys for some winter events. And
I mean, hey, listen, like I said, everyone does something differently. I mean, we just go with and like you said, it is easy because we're always in the mix. I mean, if it got to a point where we're not winning games and stuff like, we'd have to sit there and figure that out. Like I tell the guys all the time, like you have to be playing.
Right.
You know, you have to be playing. Like, I don't care. Like, Kaz lives in Texas and ain't a lot going down there, and he finds a way to play some ice hockey and play some roller when he can. Like, you can't. I tell people all the time, this is not a sport you can just pack your bag and go on a plane and fly and expect to be at your top level against these guys, especially guys that play all the time, especially like, you know, like a couple of years ago, we had a really good run just because the kids were so young in junior, D1 and pro. Because guys like PJ and Tyler Kriff, they literally play every day. Like, and when Travis was a couple of years ago was playing every day, and like that's what makes the road runners tough. Because like Joey D and Max, like I don't think anybody plays more than the two of those kids. Like you play every day. That's what made Greg so good when he was 17 years old. I mean, he played every day. He didn't fall into a lot of the loopholes that a picture of a bunch of guys Greg used to play with fell into. I saw her on Facebook. Greg Greg doesn't have a prison term under his belt or anything. So, it's important to play. And again, the summer comes around once a year. And obviously this year, because what's going on in the world, it's going to be different, whether it's not going to be as many events or teams not going to as many events. So you don't want to throw anything away. You don't want to miss an opportunity to win or even just miss an opportunity to go away and compete with the guys and be at the event. Because, for me, I mean, I've used this line. I've been living out of my suitcase for 20 summers now doing this stuff. And there's nothing else I'd rather do in my summer than do this, I mean, so you don't want to miss an opportunity to actually have an experience that you'll never forget, whether it's, winning the championship or, just having some great games and, more stories to tell on the car ride home, All
right. So Greg, Jay picked the PAMA team as a team to watch out for the summer. In your eyes, pick a different team. Who's a team that you look on that schedule going, all right, I think this team could win this thing. Who's a team you look at?
Obviously I agree with PAMA, but also Alkali. They're always knocking at the door, and their time, I think it's soon. They got some great players. They got Alex Kyle, who I think's a phenomenal hockey player. And then they have obviously, their mainstay guys that have been there forever. Guys like Spezia and Novak and Kettler and JP Lamoya. Those guys have a good system, and they play the game well. I think they're knocking. I think they have to clean up a couple things and maybe add one missing piece or so. They have obviously they have Archie and Bernie on defense. That's huge.
You have to be fair, Greg. If you really look at the last 3 years, they're always on the wrong end of a great quarterfinal overtime game.
Yeah.
Like last year, you guys beat them in overtime. You guys wound up winning the tournament. In 2016, we beat them in overtime and we wound up winning the tournament.
And they were up pretty big on you guys that game.
Yeah, they were. And then one year, I think we beat them 2-1 in the quarters in Taylor. So, I mean, if you look at the last 3 years, they're always in one of the best games in the tournament. They just happen not to hit the shot that makes them win. And that's how that can change in the next game. They hit that shot and, you're the team going home. Like, so yeah. I agree with you. Palmer and RPD those were the two I would have said. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also
Jay, not to cut you off, Greg, we brought up on one of the podcasts that the first year in 2015, Alkali played us in the finals. But yeah, in 2016, 17, 18, and 19, I believe they've got knocked out in the quarterfinals every year, which is pretty unbelievable. And a team that I always look at as the favorite going in. So yeah, I mean, it just shows again about the strength, not only the strength of the tournament, but the luck of how you fall in the playoffs and who you play. That game, us versus them, was just as tough as our final with you guys. I mean, it went to overtime. It was an unbelievable game. Could have went.
No, they had two good chances. They had two good chances to win that. Because I watched that game because I was rooting for them, and that's just the way it is. I mean, the year we beat them. I don't mean to bring it up, but Pat Lee missed an empty net on a 2-on-1. They slid it across. He one-timed it wide, and then we wound up winning a little while later in that game. So, yeah, I mean, they beat us in the round robin. So they're definitely one of the better ones.
We watched that game in the countdown the other day, Greg and I, and we were watching that game going, how did Alkali lose the game? And they were up 4-1 in that game, and that was a game. Chavo scored a late one and then scored an overtime or whatever. And, that was an unbelievable comeback for you guys. But yeah, and talking to Kettler, he made a great comment that, and I think someone else had said the same thing, that just having better starts, in the tournament, because when you go 2-2 and lose, I think last year Alkali lost to either the Buffalo team or to the Shakers or someone in a shootout. Like, you blow a game you shouldn't lose, and that comes back to haunt you. And now you got a sniper first round playoff game
Right,
instead
because
of
it changes. Yeah, it changes. It changes who you play. Absolutely.
So that's what really makes it tough.
They're definitely a bounce away. They're due. They're due. I mean, they're so talented. I also forgot to mention Troy Loggins as well. I mean, they're deep and they're
Well,
fast.
they've won other tournaments. I mean, they know what it takes to win. They're just on the listen. We've all been on the wrong side of an overtime game before. I know I have been. So I mean, it's just,
me too.
that's all it is. It's like you said. They can win the next 4 games in overtime that they play. Like it's all about who's hitting shots.
Totally.
It's a team I'm going to go with here on team to watch out for, in my eyes, and it's going to surprise you guys a little bit, but it's going to be, the Tor Mudcats. Every year they seem to kick our asses when we play them. So they always have our number for whatever reason. But I look at that team and I always feel like they're almost there. They have a great goalie in Brett Leggett, who, as we all know, can steal a game. And when you have a goalie that could steal a game, they're dangerous right off the bat. Like, in a single elimination playoff game, you always look at your goalies, right? And if it's a goalie that could steal a game, and there's only a handful of goalies in the whole Pro Division that I feel could really steal a win, and Brett's one of them. And, they have the leadership with the CJ. Obviously he's not the player he was 20 years ago, but he's still as good as you get at 45, and he's that leader on the team. And, they've started getting younger with like an Ethan Frank or a Ryan Galt, and some of these looking outside the box, like we talked about, these ice guys that have played a lot of roller. And then you have a Sarvac or a Page or a Kane or a Hoare and a Bovey and Cripps and Lauren Barron. Like, they have a lot of good good players. And I know, with their new product line coming out this year, and they really said they're making a push for the Tor brand, I could see them coming out of nowhere with maybe a Troy Terry out of Colorado who's playing with the Anaheim Ducks, or just somebody. I could just see it happening. They're going to have a guy or two that we're not even thinking about, a young player on that team, and they have a lot of those now, that group that, what's their team called? The Nitrous group. They're a whole Tour group now, some of those young players. So I could see some things changing on that team, and they're just a team that I look out for, saying, kind of an X factor team. Wouldn't shock me if they didn't make the semifinals, but it wouldn't shock me if they did. And they're a team I would watch out for.
Yeah, they a lot of experience on that team. Guys who played high level over in Europe, or if it was high level ice hockey or Team USA type stuff. Guys are experienced, and they have a good mix of talent there, and they could definitely steal a game in the playoffs.
Well, I do think they need a couple of an insurgence of young guys. They're really not that young. I mean, the two of the guys that Timmy talked about, I don't know who they are. I don't know if they played with them, but most of their guys are in their 30s outside of, I think probably Page. I don't think they have too many young guys. So if they could do that,
Frank, I mentioned are the young guys, like Galt and Frank played last year. They're both guys.
Okay. I just wasn't,
big ice hockey guys, from Nebraska, from Kansas area.
But if they picked up a couple more young guys, yeah, I mean, they're definitely in the mix because of their leadership and their goaltending, and the guys like TK and Barron and stuff like that. These are guys who have won before, and they're still good hockey players.
Now, in State Wars in general, Jay, out of all the places, so State Wars, we've been to Bentonville, Illinois, then we were in Cincinnati, Ohio, we were in Darien, Illinois, we were in St. Peters, Missouri, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Taylor, Michigan. Out of all these locations, Jay, what's your all-time favorite spot to have State Wars at?
I know his answer. I think we might have asked him last podcast. But.
Yeah, I really like Indiana. It's and the one before that, I keep saying, we laugh all the time. I also loved going to Ohio. I don't know why, but I just always liked the ride, and I like the area. So, but Indiana's my favorite. I definitely, knowing that it's going to be there and not Michigan or possibly, I like that.
And what do you love about Fort Wayne, Indiana?
I just like the area. I just, there's the bowl, there's the baseball field, the restaurants are good. We stayed in the city last time, or more of a city part, because I stayed where you stayed. I've stayed on, in the other areas that's more rural and stuff like that. I like it. It's just nice. It's a nice drive. I don't mind it. And I don't know, the area is good. And no one ever complains that they have to go there and whatnot. There's always plenty to do. And that's it.
Yeah, I really feel that we found a diamond in the rough, Greg, when we found that facility. I remember in, what was it, 2012 or 13, when I first found the facility online, we were looking for a new place to go. And I said to Greg, I'm like, hey, I think I found a new rink. And he's like, where? And I'm like, Fort Wayne, Indiana. And he's like, what? And we looked at it online. We made a phone call. And we went in for a site visit. And, the first time we went out there, you land at that airport and it's so tiny and you're driving through kind of like, that stereotypical like area you would think like in the middle of nowhere, and you're driving through and go, where the hell am I going? And you get like a pretty cool little downtown area. And then we go to the rink, which is the most important part to me. And the rink is just awesome. 3 NHL sheets, an awesome sports bar upstairs that oversees them all. Just beautiful locker rooms, kept well, just a great tournament rink. And each year we've gone back, whether it's, I think obviously things have built up there more every year too. We've gone back, but I just feel like every year I've gone, there's something else I've fallen in love with about the area. Like the first time we went, we didn't maybe see as much. But the next time we found, really nice restaurants we like going to, really cool bars to hang out at, and just really loving the area. And everyone that goes says the same thing. It's just a real fun spot.
Yeah, I agree. And I know you told me this the other day, Tim, but I know they've made some changes in the rink as well. So there's like stairs on the other side of the building where you can go upstairs to the bar and restaurant. And they added some more locker rooms in on the far side as well. So there's definitely some cool changes at the rink too. So
yeah, so the guy that originally owned it and built it had sold it, and now he bought it back last year. So he's taken over again, and he owns that field house across the street and the Tim Hortons right there. He owns a lot of stuff in the area. So he's put in, I think there's a whole upstairs that runs along the whole one rink on the left side of the building now upstairs to watch that one rink upstairs all the way down. And they've done a bunch of things to improve the building too, which is pretty awesome to hear. And I just love that rink. I mean, personally, off the record, live on this, if I could have it there every year and no one would complain about going back to the same spot every year, I would have it there every year. Like, it's just a great spot. The city loves us being there. We're in the newspaper every day. We're on the TV. They embrace us coming. Every restaurant and store and hotel in the area put signage up for us. And I think it's pretty cool when you come out of the hotel, Jay, where we stayed last year downtown. And, you don't have to drive anywhere. You can walk to a bunch of different restaurants. You can walk to the bars right there. You can walk to the baseball stadium. Like, everything, you just walk around. And it's just such a cool little setup just for the guys to at night just to hang out and have a good time and be safe at the same time.
Yeah, no, I was definitely one of the better things about the place. You go, two blocks over, you have this bar, 1 block over, the stadium's right there. No, it was really good. It's one of my favorite places to go.
I got a question, Jay. So obviously you've been around the sport for a long time and been going to all these tournaments and events nationwide. Now, kids that you've seen in the past that kind of fell off the circuit and stopped playing hockey, in your eyes, like, what kids that you saw like at a younger age would you love to see playing in the pro game now that kind of stopped playing hockey?
Oh, wow.
Like, any names?
Like, meaning they're still at an age where they could still play pro, or
or both. Kids maybe my age, guys my age who were pretty good at one point when they were younger that you would love to see still playing, and you think
how about someone
make
that
a big difference in the pro division?
Well, how about someone you thought when you were younger coaching, like, wow, this kid's going to be, I could see this kid being a great pro player one day, but this doesn't really play anymore. Like, maybe someone like that as well.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple.
Not just kids you've coached, but maybe nationwide.
Yeah, well, I would say like Long Island wise, I would use Andrew Oliveri. He was, for 4 or 5 years of watching that kid, he was the best player by far. Used to, even when he went away, against the best teams, he was still the best. If he would have stuck with it and whatnot, I think he would have been. He'd probably still be playing pro to this day. It's funny growing. Some kids I've coached. I coached Danny Cruz one year.
I was going to bring him up.
In 14 and under. and we won both nationals. And in both nationals, we were in, one was a quarter, one was a semi, and we were getting killed. Like we were losing a quarterfinal at Norwich 5-1 going into the second period. And he I remember saying, "Hey kid, let's go. We got to get something going." He looked at me and was like, "I got this." And just went out there. And I remember looking at Aaron. I'm like, "Yo, this kid's out of his mind." And he went out there and scored 6 goals, including the game winner in overtime. And we just rolled from there. That was the first time we ever won Norwich. And I was just like, and at Tours, he did the same thing. We were losing to the Wolfpack 4-1 in the second period. And he just went off.
90? He was a 90?
Yeah, he was a 90. Yeah.
Arizona?
And I think I've maybe spoken to him once since then, because he never played again. He wound up playing professional soccer, and
He plays
that was
MLS.
his thing.
Yeah.
It was his thing. But Long Island wise, probably Andrew Oliveri and probably, I don't know, Greg, John Lemansky. They all kind of stopped playing competitively right about, I think, juniors. I don't know what the age divisions were with juniors and D1 back in the day. I know they're different than they are now, but the two of them, especially Andrew Oliveri. I remember in 2002, I don't think I've ever seen a kid have a better summer in my life. He played with Tours with us. He played with you in Minnesota, and he was just phenomenal. It was stupid how good he was.
That same birth year, for us, I always think Danny Genovese. I think Danny Genovese would have been a great pro player. He had the size, had the strength. He was a big D man. Just so.
Well, I thought when he played pro with you back in the day, he was one of your better guys, just because
It was hitting.
he liked to bang. He loved it.
Yeah. I remember being at Feasterville for Tours when they were doing hitting, and we were playing the Mudcats, and Ron Tracy, who was a pretty big boy, on the Mudcats, Danny drilled him, and he went through the boards. The thing opened up, and he went flying out of the rink, and I was just like, wow, you just got laid out by a 14-year-old. He just blasted.
Yeah, but when Danny was 14, he wasn't built like a 14-year-old. He was a brick shithouse kid.
No.
No, he was a big boy.
So some names that kind of pop up are guys like Andrew Zoli. I think he'd be a pretty good.
It's funny. Aaron literally just said that a couple of weeks ago. We talk every day, and Andrew was a special player. He just he just knew things at 8 years old that no one taught him. I'm not going to take credit for. He just had an eye for the game, and his head, his smarts. And unfortunately, he, if I remember correctly, he hurt his knee. The year we won both nationals in Pee Wee, he didn't play. He was on the bench. He got dressed, but we didn't play him. And we were winning the Norwich game 4-0, and we put him on the rink with 30 seconds left. And he took the puck and stood behind the net with it till we won because he hurt his knee. And then the following year, I think he played once or twice. And then he was big into lacrosse and stuff like that. And he never got to play. But yeah, there's a bunch of kids.
Obviously, I think Thomas Stahl as well. He played some pro, and then he had that injury, and I'd really be interested to see him playing pro.
I would guess that he'd probably be one of the top 10 players. He was just awesome. It was just, again, stupid how good he was. He didn't stop. He could do it by himself. He just walked people. And, he was, had that home care thing going, and God knows, if those guys would have stayed together with that, what they would have done. Because that was the changing of the guard, where it was young kids that were really, really skilled and didn't look to put a guy through the door or something like that. They went out there and just played smart, and he would have been he'd definitely still be a factor. Absolutely.
Well, Jay, it's funny when you think of Long Island hockey, and there were a lot of good sniper teams or black ice teams over the years, but I was thinking of that Stars team, that 91 group that they had, and they were as dominant as a group as you got on Long Island, and they went away to national. They always did pretty decent or whatever, but I always think back at that group of, they just won, and a lot of those kids went on to do pretty well in ice hockey as well. So probably a lot of those players probably could have done pretty well. They would have kept with the sport.
Yeah,
too.
I would have. Danny O'Donohue probably would have been really, really good. I know he played some, I'm almost sure he played in the AHL. He's exceptional. I think he is as last I checked, a bunch of my kids were playing for him. My roller kids in ice. He's a big wig at the rinks and stuff like that. But he might have moved on to something else. I
he's in the. I think he's a cop now.
Yeah, but he was an incredible hockey player, and Stephen Castriata, Gregory Cartwright. But you know what is they all got into they all got into ice hockey as a team, and they kind of like just kind of left roller and all played ice and rarely. Steven Castriata, he was someone that always, I think he always played on the State Wars 91 team. He always found a way to play, but most of those other guys, they all stopped about Bantam. I think 16 and under is where they kind of made that transition. And, James Murphy, I see him through the Pi Ha League and stuff, and he's still an incredible hockey player. But most of them left, and they unfortunately didn't pick it back up again, when ice hockey stopped.
Right.
Yep.
I wish PJ Tallow would have kept playing more in the pro side. He did a little bit more when he was younger, and then as he got older, he got away from it a little bit more, and then he started doing McCarshall with their AA team.
Well, I will agree. I would say, like, out of that group of kids, PJ Tallow and Johnny Mack, I would say both of them. They both had success in pro because they both played on the Mudcats, and they won nationals and stuff like that. But
PJ played with us for a little bit too.
Yeah, PJ's incredible. Like PJ, we played against him, I think, last summer on Car Shield, and he's still out there, and he's still the smartest player. But I'd say PJ and Johnny Mack. But obviously Johnny Mack more for he had more injuries and stuff like that. Because got to remember, he's only 30 years old, and he stopped playing.
He could still play
20 years ago. I mean,
I watched PJ. I remember, Greg, we were at Fort Wayne one year, and PJ was playing with one of the Missouri teams. I don't know if it was Car Shield or whatever in AA. And I was watching him out there, and he was just tooling. Like, he was just so smart, like the passes he was making and everything. And he's such a little shit out there, like, and he's always been one of my favorites. So watching him play, I'm like,
I agree. It's always been one of mine too. Yeah, PJ's excellent. Nothing bad you can say about that kid's game.
Even when he was a kid, just watching him play, I was always like, oh my God, this kid is so talented. Like, he's just so smart. Like, the brains he always had,
Yeah, and I'd also put Sean O'Rourke in that category too, because he was a player and a half when he was growing up, and then he kind of fizzled out, got really serious with school. And I think he could be.
But he stopped way before PJ and Mac. Like,
way before.
He stopped like 18, I think, midget, and he was done.
Yeah. But I think he would have been a pretty good.
Yeah, he was a good player. He was a very good player.
Yeah, he would have been.
What were some of those kids' names, Jay, that you had on your 90 team from California? Remember, you stole a couple kids from out west to play with you. Or didn't you have one or two kids at Nick or something? You had a couple good kids, right?
Well, I had Nick Dillon.
Yeah, he still plays. Yeah,
I think he plays with his brother. He messes around in the men's division. Paul Anderson played with us, and Nick Marisak was one of our goalies, and Matt Dutchman. And Paul played 05 and 06 with us. I think Matt played 06 with us. I don't think I've seen Paul when Paul was playing for the OC Blades when AAU was in Feasterville. I was the last time I probably saw him. Nick Marisak, last time I saw him was at Narch. I think he played with AKS.
He was
Palm, one of them. Yeah, I saw him. And Nick Dillon. I think the last time I saw Nick Dillon, he came out when we did an alumni game like 4 or 5 years ago. We had an alumni black ice thing, and he came out for it. We actually got all those guys because we merged our team with Revision DNA that Grossman was doing, and Jack Grossman's a PA kid, and he got us all. I had half the kids left, and he had he had all offense, and I had all the guys that play defense, and we kind of just merged the team from there, and it wound up doing pretty well for us back then.
Yeah, some of those old California, that OC Blade group, Gibo and Rhett Rakshani, and there were a lot of good players in like that 88, 89 birth years and stuff.
Yeah, I forget the kid's first name, but there was a Leitner kid that was really good, and they had a million good kids. Marciano, Garrett Melenda, they had a million good kids.
And Lekovich that played with us, Danny Lekovich was really good at one time. They had a bunch of really good players out there. But I remember Gibo's kid always being really good.
All of Gibo's kids were good. The 90 was really good. I think that's Kenny. I think Kenny was the 90. But they were really good. I think
it was an 88, right, Greg?
Rhett was, he was an 88.
Yeah, so they had some really good player teams back then.
Rowan Porter also brought up Colin Hanley. From
Colin was good. Colin was gigantic, but he really stopped playing roller like at 12, 13 years old because he was away playing ice. Like, I don't remember him too much older than that playing in the travel circuit. I could be wrong.
Yeah, no.
But he's shown up at Rapid Fire in 10 years, in the last 10 years playing with his brother and stuff like that. No, Colin was really good.
Yeah, he played in the OHL with Bobby Ryan.
It was a million. There was a million Long Island kids that if they hung with it, they could be playing still at that level and whatnot. But things happen, life happens.
Yep.
Yeah, speaking of Missouri, Greg, our old buddy Brian Sharp. I mean, Sharpie was a great player out in Missouri at one time. He was as good as anybody out there. So
Yeah, he was good.
he was like a man child. So there's so many good players back in the day. But it's funny. Like some guys, like on our team, like a Mike Sanfrani. Like Mike Sanfrani, to me, at one time, was hands down the best player in the country for his age group. But he was tiny. Gets into the pro division then. And like we talked about to start this whole thing, the pro division back then was a big boys game. There wasn't much room out there. Refs didn't call anything. You put Mike Sanfrani in the way the pro division is now, when he was coming out to start playing pro, he'd probably be a dominating force, But back then it was a tough game to get in. Like a Jaden Guzman, those kind of players, which would have had trouble in that pro division back then coming into it.
Well, the thing is, back then you didn't really play pro if you were that young like that. That's something that's happened over the last 6 or 7 years with guys using midgets and bantams and pro. Is that back then you didn't do that. You didn't really get in that young, especially on the better teams, because they were just like every guy looked the same. When you look in old March magazine at like Team Hyper or something like that, like
grown men,
like every guy was the same. They were 6'2" and they were just gigantic.
All right. So, Jay, let me ask you one last question. I'm going to test your brain here. So, and this is going to be a tough question to answer, but out of all the years you've been coaching, what's the biggest loss that you think back and that you look back going, wow, that's one I definitely wish I had back? What's one that stands out in your mind? And I'm sure there's been more than one, but what's the one that really stands out?
I think I have 15 of them. Are you talking like pro-wise or youth-wise or both?
Anything, all years coaching, it could be pro, it could be youth, it could be anything, just something you wanted back saying, and maybe it was something you made a decision in a game, maybe it wasn't, but just a game you came back saying, man, we should have won that game, and I'm so pissed we didn't, and that's the one I'd like to have back. Doesn't even have to even be a championship game, could be a round robin, anything.
Well, I'll give you 4 or 5 because it's hard. Youth-wise, we lost with the 95s in 14 and under 2-1 to the Excitement. And that should just never have ever happened ever. 93s, we lost the game in Buffalo. It was the first time we thought we were going to win the Nationals. And we were up by 4 goals in the second period, and the ref called 8 penalties on us in the period. And we gave up 5 4-on-2 goals, including the winner with 2 seconds left. And I remember Brendan Jones just being so upset, like it was like inconsolable. Like I thought he was going to get arrested at 14 years old. I'll say that for the youth. And for adults, I'd say the last 2 PAMA Pros. I'd say last year against you and the year before against Rick Rat. I would say those games I thought we should have won, but that's just me.
Right. Yeah, for me, I look back. So on the youth side, I remember twice at Narch. One year at Narch, we were playing in Toronto, and it was my, Bantam team. They were 84s and 85, so Greg's age, but Greg was playing with the Roller Dragons then. And we had played the Detroit Bulldogs in the round robin. And we had a really tough draw in the round robin. And one of the reasons we had a tough draw was this Bulldogs team that we were playing, I guess the whole team dropped out. They weren't coming. And because it was platinum, they let anybody play. And some really stud team came in and filled the spot. So we had already played Anaheim Bulldogs, who was the best team. And then we had to play these guys and someone else. But I remember playing these guys. And the referee, there was this guy, I think his name was Teddy. He was a Canadian ref. And he was a total asshole. And he kept banging us with penalties, and we fell behind like 5-1 at halftime. And we came back, and we tied it 5-5. And I'll never forget Carmelo from our team. You know Carmelo.
Yep.
He gets a puck. Now, here's a game. We were, I think, the penalties were 5-0 then. They scored like 4 power play goals. Carmelo gets the puck at 5-5, about 2 minutes left in the game, and he's stick handling up the rink. He likes to chop Sally coming up Carmelo with the puck. And a guy steps at him, and Carmelo just trucks him with the puck and runs him over. Ref puts his arms up and calls another penalty on us. And I'm screaming at the ref. They score another goal, 6 power play goal, I think it was. They wound up beating us 6-5. And all 5 of our goals were even strength. And after the game, I just let loose on this ref to a point where I knew I was going to get suspended. It was my only suspension in the history of me coaching. Was I just F-bombed this guy for as long as I probably had to like drag me off the rink, and I wound up getting suspended for the next one. So that's one game I'll never forget. And then the last one for me on the youth side was again at Narch in Florida, our 85. So we talked about Thomas Stahl was on my team with Danny Genovese, and I'm not sure if Oliveri was there. We had a great team, and we were playing Bobby Ryan and the Honey Bake team.
I think that was in Michigan. No, was that Tours?
No, this was Norwich.
Okay.
That was a different one in Tours. So we're playing them in a quarterfinal, and we came back, tied the game, and they call a terrible, I thought, too many men on the ice. We had a player coming off, guy came out of the penalty box, jumped off, didn't even affect the play. Ref called it on us. They scored on a power play, wound up winning the game. And we had such a stacked squad there. And it was just one of those games I look back and I go, how did we not win that division?
Well, I remember that game specifically because you guys are up and Honeybake went out there and gooned it up. And then all of a sudden they got power plays out of it. I don't know how that happened. And then they ended up scoring on a couple and winning. So
that same thing happened, Greg. Remember in San Jose that time it happened with our team with Messina and Canoni and everybody. We had that really good junior team.
Yep.
And same thing, a whole big thing happened. They call these penalties, and I think we played against, I think it was Sigmund and those guys.
Militia. And
they wound up scoring a goal at the end of the game to beat us. But yeah, a couple of those games, you look back, and it's just like the fact that I still remember it, and it's probably been, some of those games were, 20 years ago almost is pretty amazing that they still stick in your mind, On the pro side, I guess trying to think of a game, not even PAMA Pro. I'm trying to think before. I think when we played Greg at Narch Winter Nationals in Vegas, Greg scored. This was Greg's coming out party in the pro division. Greg was a young buck. I literally only played him maybe like 3 shifts the whole game. And then Greg scored. I don't know if it was a penalty shot or just a breakaway, but we were playing the Mission team. So we looked up to these Mission guys. Justin Hoffman was in goal, and Greg scored on a breakaway to win it. And we beat them. And that was kind of Greg's coming out party. Everyone now, wanted Greg on the pro team. And then we played Rob Laurie's team, the K-Tech team in the championship. And it was our first time pro getting to a final. And back then, Winter National in Vegas was a big deal. And they scored a late goal. And I remember Rob Shear hitting the post, Rob Laurie getting one with his toe in overtime. And they wound up scoring, I don't know if it was Taj or whatever, scored an overtime on us. And that was just one that it was going to be our first pro win, and we lost in the finals. So,
wow, K-Tech, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should give a shout out to our friend Mr. Mack. He had a little surgery today, and he should be out of it by now. I thought he was getting out around 1:32, so hopefully everything went all right. And I'll hit him up when we're done. And a shout out to my boys, and I guess I'll see them soon because we're playing, I guess.
That time. Yeah, Mr. Mack, we were talking about having him on the podcast one day, and then I knew he was having surgery today, so we knew today wouldn't be good to have him on, but we figured he'd be good for a few laughs on here.
Yeah, you have to. It's not going to be politically correct, I'll tell you that much.
I want to find out his side of the story when Kramer drilled him behind the boards after the big Mudcat sniper win.
It's funny you say that. Like, we literally just talked about that like a month ago. Like, we always talk about that.
Yeah, so we always talk about our size. I'd love to hear the Max side, what it felt like to get nailed up a wall on it. So it was almost like a video game where he like ran up the wall around and got out somehow. So
I remember Greg. I remember Greg was on the bench and he looked at me and he's like, "Did he just hit him?" I'm like, "Yeah, he just hit him."
That's right. You were coaching the snipers that game, right, Jay?
Yeah,
I was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
we lost with what? 2 seconds left, 2/10 left.
Yeah.
JP scored on the power play on that terrible interference goal.
High glove. Yeah. That was a tough one to swallow.
It was because we were so inconsistent that tournament. We were terrible, then we were awesome, then we were bad. Oh God.
Yeah, we just squeaked in, and then playoffs, we just went on a little little run, and
right? Was it what triangle +1 we did on Sigmund when he played with AKS?
Exactly. Yeah, we had Kavaya on him.
Yeah, we did have Kavaya on him. Oh my God, we did.
Yeah,
That's when Phil went crazy and he had to write like a book apology to Darren, remember?
Hell yeah.
Oh, I remember. That was a tough one.
Oh,
Is that Fort Wayne calling, Tim?
I don't know. Someone keeps calling him. I don't know it's podcast Thursday. I mean, it's a Jelsic did that one day. He called right in the middle of it. We're like, Dennis, don't you know we have a podcast from 1 to 3 every day?
He didn't get the
Andrew
memo.
Otto had put, speaking of Dennis, Andrew Otto, his right-hand man, had put on our chat here about the Pro Division. Don't change anything. People are bored and have too much time to overthink. Laugh out loud. Last thing I want to mention, speaking of boredom, Jay, I know you're not a big social media guy, but that's the one thing during this whole thing that drives me crazy more than anything is people have so much time on their hands that everyone now is, an expert in science. Everyone's an expert in politics, and people just go on and on and on saying things. And listen, I'm as opinionated as they get. But listen, if you're writing on Facebook 10 times a day, you need a life. I'm sorry, go out and do something, make a difference in the world somehow. I don't care if you got to get a stick and pick up trash on the side of the highway, do something. And I made a joke on Facebook the other day, a lot of people liked, about if everyone did more, do some push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and you go for a run or a skate every time you're going to type on your Facebook account, we'd have a really in shape country when this quarantine is over. So I just can't believe how people could spend the time writing novels all day long on Facebook about all this stuff. And it's just mind blowing to me,
Everybody's got to get through it the way they know how. They think that people care what they're writing about. Maybe people do. I'm not. I don't have Instagram. I don't have Twitter. I barely have Facebook. I go on to see if I have a message, and that's pretty much about it for me. I'm happy I'm not part of that.
I love Mr.
And I don't
Fox.
pretend to know anything about anything that's not roller hockey related.
I love Shane's dad, Brian Fox. He always puts on there every year. He'll write something like, listen, no one gives a shit that your son lost his first tooth. No one wants to see that ugly kid. No one wants to see this.
It is pretty funny. He does that when that's the first day of school and they put a picture up my first day. He'll write, no one gives a fuck that it's your kid's first day of school. That's awesome. I laugh every year.
No, it's we get so and I just laugh when there's people I know that either I went to school with or I coached that barely got out of high school, and now suddenly they have some political or science degree and they want to give you all the facts of what's going on in the world. So I try to live my life, Jay, very simply. I use common sense. I think everyone needs to have a little more common sense. You don't need to turn on the TV to tell you if it's raining out or not. Just stick your head out and feel if it's raining. Use common sense. Be smart. There's things you read out there, I think, that are total bullshit. There's some truth to certain things. There's some truth in the middle of all this stuff. There's definitely a lot of politics involved because you got one side saying one and the other side saying the opposite. And it's pretty sad that we live in a world that they just can't put politics aside and just do what's best for everyone. But that's just asking too much. So
yeah, it's not. It's never going to happen.
We just got to do what's best for our families, and and think smart. And obviously, what. There comes a point where we just start getting out there a little bit more and just be smart about it. There's a way to start living more and be smart about it. So, it is what it is, but definitely appreciate you, Jay, taking the time today to have some laughs with us here. Always fun catching up. This is something that Jay and I and Greg have done probably 100 times in the last year and a half on the phone, but we give everybody a little insight into this, into the conversations here. And we didn't get to talk about Star Wars yet. That was one of my parts too, to talk about Star Wars. We didn't get into that. So,
hey, listen, we could do that on Tuesday's podcast.
We still got to go over the right way to watch the movies, for the next generation. So that's
listen, I watched everything in order, including 130 something episodes of the animated series 2 weeks ago. I watched everything in order.
Damn.
Starting with episode 1 through that way.
I started with episode 1. Yeah.
So even knowing everything that how different is it watching it that way too, rather than starting with 4?
You know what? It's gonna sound foolish because a lot of people aren't into it, but when you watch the animated series, it actually makes the prequels way better. And I like the prequels. I don't care what anybody says. So,
okay. All right. Well, that's Jason Muro from Mission Black Ice, giving us his insight today on a lot of different things. We always appreciate him being on here. Definitely one of the good guys in the sports, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon and talking to you even sooner, bud.
You got it. Take care, guys.
Thanks for coming on, Jay.
No problem, buddy.
Later, buddy. Bye.
Later, guys.
All right, that's Jason Muro, Mission Black Ice. Definitely one one of my favorite guys in the sport, and someone we consider a real close friend, and fun getting his insight into a lot of different things, Greg.
Yeah, obviously we, like you said, we're on those calls probably 100 times the last year and a half or so. And there's a couple more swear words and stuff like that, but people got the gist of it. He'll definitely tell you how he sees it and the way he thinks. But yeah, it's always fun catching up with Jay. He's a real character, and he's very passionate about the sport.
We said this the other day. We were talking about whether it was the Michael Jordan stuff, or then we were talking about, I know Andrew Otto had texted us about some stuff, and we get into about, comparing generations and whatnot. The fun part about sports for me is there are no right or wrong answers. Everything we talked about today, that's Jay's opinion, that's your opinion, that's my opinion. We could talk about players, we could talk about what teams are going to win. We could talk about who's better, Michael Jordan or LeBron James, or we could talk about Wayne Gretzky compared to Mario Lemieux, or Gordie Howe compared to Sidney Crosby, or Bobby Orr compared to Eric Carlson. And the truth of the matter is there really is no right or wrong answers. Everyone's got an opinion, and some have, better ways of backing up their opinion than others. But really, at the end of the day, we're all biased. I'm going to love my sniper guys. He's going to love his black guys size. Joe Cook's going to love his alkali guys. Rob Turner's going to love his PAMA guys. Matt Koleski's going to love his Border Cat guys, and so on and so forth. And that's the beauty of it. If I ask you about some of the best guys in the sport, you're probably going to name guys that were teammates of yours over the years at some point, and it's just how it goes. So that's what makes sports so fun. You get to talk all day long, and usually over a bunch of beers about it, and it's no right or wrong. It's just fun. And that's what I love about talking sports. And made it fun today, just talking a little about the pro division, But the one thing I think we can all agree on is the pro game is a great game. And the PAMA Pro division is just the highlight of that pro division. And definitely look forward to having a great pro division this summer in Fort Wayne and or Michigan, wherever it winds up being. So we'll follow up with that more information soon. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully in the next few days, by the middle of next week, we have that finalized. And stay tuned next week on Tuesday for another State Wars Hockey podcast.
Looking forward to it, Tim. We'll announce probably Monday or so, who's going to be on the pod. So
yep.
Should be fun. And shout out to Mr. Mack. Hopefully surgery went well.
Yeah, definitely praise to Mr. Mack, and another great guy in the sport. And we'll see everybody next week. Have a good weekend. We're out. State Wars Hockey Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is PJ Cavalla, the voice of State Wars Hockey, and you are watching the SWH podcast brought to you by Glass Half Full Productions. Thank you to all of our amazing sponsors: Mission Bauer, Tour, Alkali, La Beta, Rink Rat, Conix, Warrior, Monkey Sports, Yord Watches, Car Shield, Rocket Puck, Wraparound, and Top Shelf Targets. We look forward to seeing you all on the rink soon.